Chapter 1152. Being caught red-handed, she didn't know how to react for a moment. She didn't dare to move at all. That person's hand had already slowly moved away from her wrist and reached into her palm. He took out the bunch of keys and placed it in front of her. He hooked it with one finger and smiled meaningfully. "Didn't you want to accompany this prince?" "What do you mean by this?" The two of them were in an ambiguous position, one on top and the other below. The man was handsome and the woman was beautiful. It should have been a charming scene, but in reality, the atmosphere had quietly changed. After he finished speaking, it slowly turned cold. Pang Zhijing swallowed her saliva as her heart thumped wildly. But the more urgent it was, the calmer she had to be. She took a deep breath and raised a flattering smile. "Didn't I help you take off your clothes? I was afraid that the bunch of keys would hurt you, so I kindly helped you take it away. I can swear to the moon that I didn't mean it." "The moon?" Xiao Ho chuckled. In this kind of quiet and tense atmosphere, it was especially magnetic. The moon is waxing and waning, and it's different every night. Do you think that this prince will believe you if you swear to such a fickle thing? He really was a difficult person to deal with. "Then what do you want me to do to make you believe me?" She would first muddle through this hurdle. In any case, he was still drugged, so she could do whatever she wanted to him later. Xiao Ho looked up and his eyes flashed. He had seen through her thoughts, but he didn't expose her. His finger hooked the bunch of keys and turned it around. Then he raised his hand and threw it out of the bed. With a "quang dang" sound, the bunch of keys landed somewhere. She couldn't help but cry out. Then she was suddenly pulled down by a force. The world spun and she was quickly removed. The person she had just pressed down on was now looking down at her. "Pleasing me." Xiao Ho's thin lips parted as he looked at her with an indifferent expression. "What?" She was frightened. "Xiao Ho, do you know what you're saying?" Xiao Ho scoffed. "Didn't you just ask what you had to do to make this prince believe you? Now I want you to show your loyalty and you can't do it." She smelled that something was wrong. Was there something wrong with the medicine? Thinking of this, she thought that it was impossible for her to get the key tonight, so she planned to break free. "Xiao Ho, don't forget your identity. Also, regardless of whether we're working together or not, I'm still the princess sent by the Southern Blue Continent to make peace with the Southern Blue Continent. You can't do anything improper to me." "Illegal?" Xiao Ho seemed to have heard the funniest joke in the world. His laughter reverberated from his chest, making her feel a little dizzy. "Then may I ask your highness, who was the one who drugged the tea?" She was originally extremely angry, but when she heard his question, she immediately became like a deflated balloon. It turned out that he had already discovered her, so if she didn't run now, when would she? She smiled and looked up. "What is the Lord saying? Why can't this princess understand a single word?" After saying this, while her hands could still move freely, she immediately pushed him to the side. She immediately got up and prepared to escape. However, even though she was fast, someone was faster than her. Just as she jumped off the bed, there was a force that brought her back up. She was a little dazed from the fall. When she opened her eyes, Xiao Ho reached out to hold her chin. His expression was a little cold. "Pang Zhijing, weren't you the one who drugged me? Didn't you want to get close to this king? Since you're prey that delivered itself to my door, how could this king let you go so easily?" Hearing his words, the alarm bells in Pang Zhijing's heart rang. This person wouldn't he force himself on her, right? She was afraid and immediately wanted to struggle, but she found that she couldn't move her body. She looked at the person in front of her in fear. Xiao Ho reached out to touch her face and whispered like a lover, "This king has already sealed your acupuncture points. You can't escape," she anxiously said, trying to wake him up. "Xiao Ho, are you too drugged? Wake up." When Xiao Ho heard this, he approached her and slowly said in her panic, "Do you really think that your every move can escape this king's control?" What do you mean?" She was a little confused. This prince knows exactly what medicine you took when you entered the clinic. So, if you want to fool this prince, your skills are still very shallow. He chuckled and looked at her stunned expression. It seemed that he was amused, and his mood was somewhat happy. She never thought that this person would send someone to monitor her. She felt very indignant, but there was one thing she couldn't understand. The medicine only went through my hands and I saw you drink it with my own eyes, so how can you be safe and sound? A faint self-deprecation appeared in Xiao Ho's eyes. Do you think that if you want to survive in the imperial palace, you can survive until now without the ability to protect yourself? This king has been testing medicine since young. I don't dare say that I can deal with all the anesthetics and love poisons in the world, but in this king's eyes, those medicines on the market are nothing. That's why this king drank your tea. After listening to these words, the first thought that came to her mind was not that he had lied to her, but that his tone was plain and ordinary, but it was full of vicissitudes that made her heart ache. She did not understand why she would feel this way. However, at this time, his breath hit her face, making her come back to her senses. She angrily said, "So you've been acting this whole time. Compared to your dirty tricks, this king feels that this king is already magnanimous. Since you've chosen this path, then you should be prepared to bear the consequences." As soon as he finished speaking, there was a rip. Her clothes had already been torn apart, lying in his hands like two pieces of cloth. This change was too fast, so she didn't have time to react. "Xiao Ho, you can't be like this. You bought this medicine, so you should know what it does. Now that you're reacting like this king is confused. Did you want this king to pamper you and then take the key?" Xiao Ho bit her shoulder and then heard her muffled groan. He wasn't wrong, she did want to take the key, but this medicine wasn't her original intention. But the other side didn't listen to her explanation and blocked her mouth as soon as she opened her mouth. Woo, what should she do? This was not the result she wanted. Suddenly, Xiao Ho's attack stopped. He tasted her tears and it was salty, making his reason come back to him. He propped himself up and looked at her. Her petite cheeks were covered in tears and her cherry lips were red from being bitten by him. The most important thing was that her tear-filled eyes were filled with grievance, fear, and despair. He felt that somewhere deep in his heart, he suddenly felt a stab of pain. "I didn't want to give you this medicine at all. I wanted to buy a knockout drug, but the doctor misunderstood." Her voice was choked with sobs and she was filled with grievance. Xiao Ho froze because of her words. "You big scoundrel, bastard." Woo! It was clearly a thunderstorm, but at this moment, his ears were only filled with the sound of her crying. Chapter 1153. Seeing the crying Pang Zhijing in front of him, Xiao Ho didn't know what to do this time. It wasn't that he hadn't seen people cry before, but this was the first time he had seen someone cry to the point that he couldn't get rid of them. He was silent for a while before unnaturally raising his hand to wipe the tears off her face. The extra gentle touch on her face made Pang Zhijing stare at him in a daze. He felt a bit uncomfortable being stared at by her. His movements were gentle, but his words were more obvious. "What this king hates the most is people plotting against me behind my back. Princess, what do you have to say about this?" At a time like this, he had to take the initiative and stand at the highest point. He had to make her revere him from her initial sadness and anger. Sure enough, Pang Zhijing was just full of anger, but in an instant, she was only left with bits and pieces of dregs by his words. Using this kind of despicable method wasn't right, but he wasn't a good person either. Although she felt it was wrong, she didn't regret it. "You're not right. Could it be that you don't allow me to give you a taste of your own medicine?" Xiao Ho let out a sigh of relief in his heart, but he didn't show it on his face. He coldly said, "Princess, even if you get the key, do you think you can safely leave the capital?" "What do you mean?" She was surprised. He didn't look like he was lying. "The people who want to kill you are lying in ambush outside the capital. If it wasn't for this king's protection, do you think you can still stand here and bargain with this king?" Xiao Ho gave a soft snort. Pang Zhijing finally remembered the assassination attempt a few days ago. She had been too comfortable and happy recently, forgetting that the disaster caused by the original body hadn't been solved yet. Her face was filled with annoyance. Xiao Ho saw that her mood was no longer as agitated as before, so he unsealed her acupuncture points. Receiving her freedom, Peng Zhijing immediately stood up from the bed and jumped far away from him. She straightened her neck and said, "Since my plan has been exposed, just say how you want to punish me. The winner is king and the loser is in the wrong." After saying this, the person in front of her leaned against the bed and stared at her without blinking. She couldn't understand the emotions in his eyes. "Sometimes, I really want to get rid of you." She shuddered. She could tell that he was serious. She thought that if it wasn't for the fact that she was still useful, he would have left her to fend for herself. "I'll let it go this time. If there's a next time, I'll throw you out of the city. Then you'll know that I've been merciful to you." She subconsciously clenched her fists. She knew that he meant what he said. Xiao Ho didn't misjudge her fear, and a trace of regret floated in his heart. He knew that she was like this, and threatening her would only be counterproductive. More importantly, he didn't know why he suddenly couldn't bear it. This feeling came inexplicably and suddenly. "Okay." She bit her lip and agreed. After saying that, she turned around and walked towards the door like a wandering soul. After taking 2 or 3 steps, her wrist was suddenly grabbed from behind. She didn't know where her strength came from, but she turned around and fiercely pushed him back. She panicked like a trapped beast, "Don't touch me." Xiao Ho had been annoyed by her push, but seeing her reaction, most of the anger in his heart dissipated. "If you go out like this, you'll fall into the eyes of others. This king will have someone come in and change your clothes." After saying this, he didn't look at her again as he walked past her. Even after she finished changing her clothes, she still didn't see him appear. "Princess, Lord is so good to you," the maid in the king's palace said with a look of envy. Her lips twitched, but she couldn't smile no matter how hard she tried. She stepped over the threshold and floated out of the yard like a zombie. In the hallway, the rain flew in and her clothes were covered in water vapor, bringing with it a bone-chilling cold. Her heart was filled with complicated and contradictory feelings. He had clearly almost violated her, but she couldn't hate him. Although on the way here, he had schemed against her many times, but she still had a trace of beautiful expectations for him. Was it because she was obsessed with looks? Did she not have any resistance towards beautiful people or things? As for him, he was also very strange. He could clearly be very cold and heartless to her, but when she schemed against him, he had spared her again and again. Just now, he had even carefully paid attention to her image. Was it because she was his trump card, so he was very lenient towards her? Peng Zhijing, Peng Zhijing, for you right now, isn't the most important thing to you to regain your freedom and become an unrestrained and happy tourist? What is wrong with you? She walked to the king's palace entrance and stepped into the rain, not caring about the rain falling on her body. The servants guarding outside were so scared that they immediately opened their umbrellas to catch her. She looked up at the dark sky and her heart suddenly felt very empty. What was the meaning of me transmigrating? When Peng Zhijing left the room, Xiao Ho did not go far. He stood on the steps and watched her figure leave with a silent expression. That delicate figure in the wind and rain was like a butterfly that could be blown away at any time, so fragile. It was such a fragile person that he had almost destroyed her just now. Today, when he found out that she had entered the medicine store to buy medicine to scheme against him, according to normal circumstances, he should have been used to it. But the first thing he felt was disappointment. So she was not different from other girls. At that time, he was restrained by his emotions and did not investigate further. Why did he have such thoughts? Now that he thought about it, she was different in his eyes. So later on, he beat her at her own game and wanted her to taste some bitterness. This medicine could not be casually used. Even if it was a normal man, she would still be at a disadvantage in terms of strength. He had originally planned to teach her a lesson, but when he touched her, everything was out of his control. That medicine should not have any effect on him, but it was like he was poisoned and couldn't control his actions. Especially when she took the key, his heart was filled with a trace of panic. If she opened the exquisite lock like this and ran far away, where would he go to find her? Fortunately, her tears woke him up, but at that moment, he couldn't look into her clear eyes, especially when she cried and said that the medicine wasn't her intention. He immediately overturned his previous denial and anger towards her. How could such a stupid girl come up with such a lousy idea? But he was also glad that it was not a knockout drug. That kind of thing would take some time to dissolve in his body. Perhaps by that time, she would have already escaped far away. Your Highness, are you tempted? A figure suddenly appeared behind him and hit the nail on the head. Chapter 1154. The sudden question that came from behind him made Xiao Hoji freeze on the spot. His pupils constricted. The heavy rain, lightning, and thunder seemed to have lost their sound. His mind went blank. How is this possible? Not hearing Lord's reply, Xiao Ho's advisor, Lin Jiangdong, walked out from the shadows. He bowed in front of Xiao Ho, then repeated his question. Lord, have you fallen in love with that princess? The first time was a question, but the second time was filled with certainty. Although his heart was surging with emotions, Xiao Ho still maintained a calm expression. Sir Lin, aren't you thinking too much? Lin Jiangdong rubbed his chin and smiled faintly. Lord, the onlooker sees everything clearly. The Southern Blue Princess has a lively temperament and a good appearance. It's not surprising that you've fallen in love with her after spending so much time with her. What does Sir want to say? Xiao Ho glanced at Lin Jiangdong. Lin Jiangdong sighed, Lord, please don't be sentimental at this time. You still have a blood feud to take. If you don't move forward because of love, then all our years of planning will go to waste. During this period of time, he had seen Lord's changes. Ever since the Southern Blue Princess appeared, his master had changed a lot. Although it was only a small change, it was a fatal flaw for a person in power. Xiao Ho narrowed his eyes. Are you lecturing this prince? Lin Jiangdong bowed and apologized. This one doesn't dare. It's just that this one doesn't want to see Lord forget our grand plan because of your soft-heartedness. Xiao Ho smiled coldly. How can this prince forget? This prince has prepared for so many years, how can I give up halfway? Don't worry about Pang Zhijing. This prince won't lose the big picture for a small thing, so you don't need to be so paranoid. She doesn't have the ability to make this prince lose control. With the Lord's promise, Lin Jiangdong breathed a sigh of relief. The Lord is wise. After Lin Jiangdong left, Xiao Ho put his hands behind his back and looked up at the curtain of rain. Perhaps, Lin Jiangdong was right and wrong, but he would never disrupt his plans for a woman. One person, one eves, one dark night, yet his back appeared bleak. In a courtyard in the capital. Higashio Motetsu leaned lazily on the chaise lounge, fiddling with the fan in his hand. His attention was focused on his hand, and he said in a casual tone, Today, Palace Lord, you came here personally. Do you have any orders for me? Dong Tingfan was sitting at the head of the table. He was very displeased at his son's sloppy appearance. You always stand and sit like this. How are you going to lead everyone in the Moon Palace in the future? I've been like this since I was young. There's nothing I can do about it, so you don't have to take it to heart. If you want to hand over the Moon Palace to me, then hand it over to me. If you don't want to hand it over to me, then that's fine too. I'm used to freedom. If you want me to be free, then I'd be more than happy. Higashio Motetsu still looked indifferent. As soon as he said this, Dong Tingfan's blood rushed to his head. He angrily pointed at his unambitious son. Do you really want to anger your father to death? Higashio Motetsu looked at him coldly. Although there was a smile at the corner of his mouth, his words were very rude. Do you think you've ever fulfilled your responsibilities as a husband or a father? I'm not going to argue with you. Dong Tingfan held his forehead. He couldn't discipline this son of his. He remembered the official business he had come for today, and said coldly, "Tomorrow night is the palace banquet for the official meeting between the two countries. I have something I need you to do." Higashio Motetsu shrugged, unsurprised. "Speak. What is it?" Although Dong Tingfan didn't like his son's attitude, he had no choice but to pretend he didn't see it. There were still many things he needed his son to help him with. He gave a look to the person beside him, and a subordinate handed him a letter. After Higashio Motetsu took the letter, he said calmly, "This matter concerns the intensification of the conflict between Xiao Ran and Xiao Su. You must take care of it properly." Hearing this, Higashio Motetsu was a little surprised. What kind of matter could achieve such an effect? He opened the letter without hesitation. After skimming through it, his expression turned ugly. Let Chu Qingyan lose her chastity to Xiao Su at the palace banquet? Dong Tingfan didn't notice his expression and explained, "Xiao Ran has taken a liking to Chu Qingyan, but because of the marriage contract, Consort, you came up with this idea. Just follow the plan written on it. This way, Xiao Su and Xiao Ran's brotherhood is more or less over. Consort, you wants to use this matter to make it impossible for them to be brothers. You also know that Xiao Ran doesn't have a strong desire to seize the throne. This time, it can be considered giving him a push." After saying this, Dong Tingfan didn't hear a reply for a long time. He frowned slightly. "What? Do you have something to say about this plan?" Higashio Motetsu clenched the paper in his hand as if he wanted to crush it. His tone was still as mocking as usual. "Don't you think it's disgraceful to do such a thing? You're actually using a woman." Dong Tingfan coldly glanced at him. "Wang Yu, there's no honor or dishonor in disputes over power. As long as you can achieve your goal, there's nothing wrong with using unscrupulous means. What you lack now is the decisiveness to achieve great things. Alright, father still has things to deal with, so I'll be leaving first. You just have to remember that this matter can only succeed." After saying this, Dong Tingfan didn't linger and left with his men. Only Higashio Motetsu and Xuanqi Zimo were left in the hall. Xuanqi Zimo felt the temperature in the room drop continuously, and his scalp tightened. The palace lord didn't know about the relationship between the young palace lord and Chu Qingyan, but he knew very well that Chu Qingyan was the only friend that the young palace lord had taken a liking to after so many years. Now that he was going to scheme against her, it was as difficult as ascending to the heavens for the young palace lord. "Young palace lord, are you all right?" he asked with difficulty. He shouldn't have asked at this time, but he knew that other than him, no one else would dare to ask such a question. Higashio Motetsu's gaze never left the letter in his hand. He suddenly laughed softly. His laughter was bleak and bitter. "Zimo, I've always thought that standing on the opposite side of Xiao Su, as long as I didn't hurt her, I would be able to maintain the relationship between the two of us. But now, I realize that I was wrong. How can things be so simple in this world? As long as she's someone by Xiao Su's side, the flames of war will spread to her. I just didn't expect it to come so soon." Xuanqi Zimo was stunned. It was rare to hear the young palace lord use the word "I" to speak. It seemed that the young palace lord had suffered a huge blow this time, but he didn't know how to comfort him. He blamed himself for being clumsy. Higashio Motetsu crushed the letter in his hand, his eyes dark and gloomy. "Little girl, how can I protect you?" Chapter 1155. Celestial Crane Tower. When Xiao Ran received his eldest brother's invitation, he was a little surprised. He knew that his eldest brother had been busy with the safety of the city and had been busy all this time. He didn't expect that his eldest brother would take the time to invite him out before the start of the palace banquet. It was really unexpected. However, what puzzled him even more was that his eldest brother had never invited him out before. Moreover, it was outside. He pushed open the door to the private room with a stomach full of questions. The moment he entered, he saw his eldest brother sitting leisurely. When he saw him, he raised his chin, indicating for him to sit anywhere. After not seeing his eldest brother for a few days, Xiao Ran felt that his eldest brother had become more dignified. He immediately sat down opposite him and smiled. Imperial brother, what wind blew you here today? Ever since the Southern Heavens envoy was confirmed to be entering the capital, his eldest brother had always been a dragon. Every time he wanted to find him, he was met with emptiness. However, this was also because his imperial mother didn't allow him to leave the palace. If not for today's invitation, he would probably be cooped up in the palace for a while. We two brothers haven't seen each other for a long time. I'm afraid that after today's palace banquet, there will be even fewer opportunities for us to meet. Therefore, while there's still some free time, I asked you out to catch up. Xiao Su poured a cup of tea for him and pushed it towards him, his expression as usual. Xiao Ran was surprised. Imperial brother, aren't you going to be in the capital in the future? Why are there fewer opportunities for us to meet? Xiao Su looked at him, his gaze indifferent. The marriage between Ian and I has been delayed for too long. It's time to carry it out. I plan to bring up the matter of the marriage to Imperial Father after the Southern Heavens peace talks. At that time, I will definitely be too busy to do anything else. After that, I will bring her back to my fief. If there's no special summons, I won't easily return to the capital. Therefore, there won't be many opportunities for us to meet. His words revealed several layers of information. First, his marriage with the little fellow would definitely be completed. Second, he had no intention of seizing the throne, so he and the people behind him could rest assured that they did not have to spend too much effort on him. Unfortunately, Xiao Ran didn't understand his deeper meaning at all. His mind was only focused on his marriage with Qin Yan. Isn't this too fast? He was a little incoherent. It was like a bolt from the blue. He was a little lost. Seeing Xiao Ran's reaction, Xiao Su frowned slightly. Ian has been waiting for me for 5 years. I can't let her continue to follow me without a proper status. Xiao Ran suddenly stood up agitatedly, but Imperial brother, do you really treat Qin Yan with sincerity? If you're only marrying her because of the Imperial edict, it's unfair to Qin Yan or to you. Qin Yan is a good girl. She deserves better treatment. A forced marriage is not happy. Xiao Ran's extreme reaction was a little unexpected in Xiao Su's eyes. He came today to see how much effort his imperial brother had spent on the little fellow. Now, it seemed that it had exceeded his expectations. Xiao Ran, do you think that I don't treat Ian with sincerity? You're not us. How do you know what we're thinking? Xiao Su said indifferently. With little effort, he settled Xiao Ran's agitated emotions. Xiao Ran sat down in a daze. But then he reacted, but outside, isn't there a rumor about you and the Southern Blue Princess? His hesitant words made Xiao Su raise his eyebrows. You've already grown up. In the struggle for power, you should learn what to believe and what not to believe. Sometimes, what you see with your eyes and hear with your ears can't be trusted. Looking at his imperial brother who was still so simple, Xiao Su had a trace of worry in his heart. Could this kind of Xiao Ran really support his great cause in the future? Xiao Ran subconsciously wanted to refute, but seeing his imperial brother's eyes, his words got stuck in his throat. Only then did he realize that his performance was a little too extreme. He sat down embarrassedly and said with an unnatural expression, "Isn't it because I'm too concerned? No matter what, Qin Yan is still my friend. Although you're my imperial brother, I'm only helping reason, not family." Facing this kind of Xiao Ran, Xiao Su couldn't help but frown. It seemed that this trip couldn't change his mind at all. This result made him feel disappointed in his imperial brother for the first time. Fourth imperial brother, at certain times, people will subconsciously ignore some truths in order to convince themselves. I hope that you won't be blinded. I hope that you won't interfere in the matter between me and Ian. It's about time, you should return to the palace to prepare for tonight's banquet. Since there was no conclusion to continue talking, Xiao Su gave up on the idea. Perhaps time would prove everything. But when he stood up, Xiao Ran suddenly stopped him. He seemed to be enduring something. Imperial brother, in the past, you would always give in to me. Xiao Su seemed to know what he was going to say next. Before he could say something even more irrevocable, he coldly interrupted him. "Fourth Imperial brother, there are some things that I don't fight for because I don't like them and don't care. But there are some people that can't be exchanged or compromised. You're almost 20 years old, don't say such childish things. Take care of yourself, I'm leaving." Before he left, Xiaosu looked deeply at his fourth Imperial brother in front of him. He didn't know if it was because he was absent for so many years, or because the environment could easily change a person, but he felt that the naive and unaffected fourth Imperial brother seemed to have slowly faded away with the flow of time. If he hadn't stopped him in time just now, it was likely that the brothers would have turned against each other. The little fellow was the bottom line that he couldn't back down from. For this, even if he met gods, he would kill gods. If he met Buddha, he wouldn't hesitate to kill Buddha. But he didn't want the little fellow to become a conflict between the brothers. After the door was closed, Xiaoran slumped into the chair like a piece of soft mud. The last words that his eldest brother said just now were the most severe he had ever heard in his life. It wasn't just a criticism, it was a warning. Why? In the past, his eldest brother wasn't like this. Even if he did something wrong, his eldest brother would tolerate him and not be harsh on him. Whatever he wanted, his imperial brother wouldn't fight with him. Why was it that now, when he only mentioned Qing Yan a little, his imperial brother became different? Could it be that there was something that he had subconsciously overlooked? However, no matter what, Qing Yan was the first woman he had ever admired. His eldest brother had made too many enemies and was unable to ensure her safety. Therefore, he was the only one who could provide her happiness. Thinking of this, he became even more determined. Everything had to be done before his eldest brother and Qing Yan got married. Otherwise, it would be too late. But his imperial mother had already promised him. After tonight's palace banquet, perhaps he would be able to get what he wanted. Xiaoran clasped his hands on the table and revealed an expectant smile. He had completely forgotten what Xiaosu had said just now. Chapter 1156. It was already close to evening, and there were only 2 hours left before the start of the banquet. At this time, Chu Qingyan had already changed her clothes. Xining had just inserted the last hairpin into her hair when she received news that Big Ice Cube had returned. She couldn't wait to know the result of his conversation with Xiaoran, so she lifted her dress and prepared to go out to see him. However, just as she stepped out of the room, she saw the person standing at the bottom of the stairs. The flowers were gradually mesmerizing, and in front of her was a delicate and handsome man. The person in front of her was clearly wearing the usual black brocade robe, but he had changed it into a silver belt with dark patterns. His face was still covered by a silver mask, and other than his slender fingers, his entire body was covered. However, under the parasol tree, at a glance, there were luxuriant flowers and leaves, and the handsome tree was pleasing to the eye. She couldn't help but raise the corners of her mouth. "I just knew you were back, and you're already here." Xiaosu's gaze fell on the young girl on the stairs. For this solemn banquet, she had combed her hair into a dignified and beautiful bun, with sapphire blue peacock gold hairpins on both sides. Her wings looked like they were about to spread out and fly, adding a touch of liveliness and elegance. She was wearing a dark red robe, with a belt of the same color as his waist. At a glance, without looking at her beautiful face, she gave off a fresh and elegant feeling. The two looked at each other and unconsciously smiled. There was a kind of joy between lovers, where they would smile as soon as they saw you. This was the simplest and most direct form of deep affection that came from the heart. Xiaosu waved his hand at her. Without thinking, she lifted her dress and ran towards him, causing Xining to repeatedly warn her to be careful of the decorations on the dress. Unfortunately, she was pulled away by Jasper, giving these two little lovers some space alone. Chu Qingyan ran 3 steps in front of him, then stopped and turned around playfully. "How is it? Does this dress look good?" Xiaosu's attention was attracted by her. His gaze fell on her bright eyes, and the corners of his mouth rose. "It suits you very well." "Of course. I've always trusted water spirit's foresight." She giggled and ran towards him like a butterfly. Xiaosu opened his arms to catch her, then pinched her smiling face. You're already so old, yet you're still so clingy. I only stick to you. If you find me annoying, I'll find someone else. She gave him a mischievous smile, her words full of ridicule. Xiaosu pinched her nose and chastised her, how dare you? She stuck out her tongue and returned to the topic at hand. How was it today? He knew what she wanted to ask, but he didn't want to tell her the truth at this moment. He didn't want her to feel embarrassed, so he said casually, we didn't talk for long before someone from the palace came to pass a message, so let's put this matter aside for now. After the palace banquet is over, I'll deal with it. She wanted to be at ease when Big Ice Cube was in charge, so she didn't think too much about it. She nodded and said, should we set off now? I still have things to deal with, so you can leave first. I've already sent Jean Xian to pick you up. After 2 hours, I'll meet you in the palace. This palace banquet was related to the peace negotiations between the two countries. It was an important matter that couldn't be neglected, so he had to pay more attention to the city's defenses. Chu Qingyan nodded. The closer it was to the palace banquet, the busier Big Ice Cube was. This was obvious to all. Although it pained her to see it, she couldn't help much. She could only remind him to take good care of himself. Jean Xian had already arrived. Chu Qingyan thought of Xining and immediately turned to greet them. Then she acted coquettishly to Big Ice Cube for a while before leading everyone to the entrance of the palace. Xiaosu watched her departing figure. He stood there quietly for a while before leaving to deal with the matters. The group of people had just left the palace when they saw Jean Xian standing at the entrance. After not seeing him for a while, Chu Qingyan felt that he was becoming more and more high-spirited. In the past, he was like a sword that was hidden in a scabbard. All the light was hidden. Now, he was like a sharp sword that was unsheathed, shining brightly under the sun. She saw it and felt proud. This was someone who had walked out from under her, so how could he be bad? Master. Jean Xian saw her and immediately went up to greet her respectfully. I heard that the places under your command have improved security. The people are full of praises for you. You did not embarrass me. You did well. She had always been fair in her rewards and punishments to her own people, so she spared no effort in praising him. Jean Xian had a serious face just now, but when he heard his master praise him like this, his cheeks flushed red and he was a little embarrassed. He cupped his hands and said, this is what this subordinate should do. All right, don't be modest. I haven't seen anyone at your age who can do this. Work hard and save up for your wife. I've already reserved the best candidate for you. Chu Qingyan said as she looked at Xining who had been looking over. Jean Xian's face turned red again, but he had always been serious. Chu Qingyan could not tease him, so under everyone's urging, he got into the carriage. Xining and Jasper also climbed into the carriage. But before getting in, Xining secretly glanced back and happened to meet Jean Xian's gaze. The two of them blushed and immediately went about their own business. After the group finished getting ready, Jean Xian raised his hand and gave the order to set off. When he first entered the imperial court, it was completely because of His Highness's words that moved his heart. Now that he had gradually gained a firm foothold in the imperial court, if his master needed anything in the future, he would give his all without hesitation. Chu Qingyan lifted the curtain and pointed at the heroic Jean Xian as she said to Xining, there aren't many good men like this. You have to hold on tight. The heat on Xining's face had not subsided, and because of her master's teasing, she blushed even more. She covered her face and said, Master, don't say any more. This servant didn't hear anything. These words made Chu Qingyan and Jasper burst into laughter. The officials who could attend this time's palace banquet all had very high statuses. The women who could attend all had a certain title of nobility. This was also to show respect for the peace talks between the two countries. However, at the palace entrance, there were people coming and going, and there was an endless stream of horses and carriages. Regardless of their status, they all had to enter the palace in order of arrival. Chu Qingyan's group was a bit late, so they were at the back waiting for the people in front to enter the palace first. At this time, Jasper suddenly said, "Master, isn't that the Southern Song Princess carriage?" Chu Qingyan heard this and looked in the direction of her finger. Sure enough, she saw Pang Zhijing's carriage. The Southern Song's customs were different from the Sichuan, so her carriage, which was completely different from the Sichuan, stood out on the entire road. It was hard not to notice it. However, there were many carriages between them, so it was difficult to greet each other. Chu Qingyan wanted to withdraw her gaze, but at this time, a gust of night wind blew and lifted the curtain of the carriage. After she glanced at it, she couldn't help but frown. With that glance, she seemed to see that Pang Zhijing's complexion was very bad. Moreover, her expression was grave, as if she was thinking about something important. Chu Qingyan felt that something was wrong when she saw Pang Zhijing's expression at such a crucial moment in the peace talks between the two countries. Could it be that there would be some unforeseen event at tonight's palace banquet? Chapter 1157. Chu Qingyan was right. Pang Zhijing's complexion was very poor today because she had fallen ill after being drenched in the rain last night. However, today's banquet was very important and she could not be absent. Even if she wanted to refuse, the group of envoys and Xiao Ho would not allow it. "Lord, the princess has arrived." Xiao Ho's subordinate whispered into his ear. Xiao Ho looked over. Today, she was wearing a long dress that was a mix of light white and dark blue. She wore a furry headdress with red and white beads hanging from the bottom. The beads on both sides of her head fell on her shoulders. She looked very cute and playful. A large string of silver ornaments hung in front of her chest. When she walked, the bells jingled. However, his gaze fell on her pale face and he frowned slightly. The moment Pang Zhijing entered the palace, she automatically searched for Xiao Ho's figure. Naturally, she saw him first. However, unlike her usual provocative gaze, she subconsciously retracted her gaze and obediently followed the group of envoys to their seats. To be exact, she was a little guilty because she was afraid that she would do something unusual tonight. Therefore, she did not dare to face Xiao Ho directly. She was afraid that he would find out. Xiao Ho thought that she was still brooding over what happened last night and did not take it to heart. He focused on being a weak and sickly prince. Chu Qingyan brought Jin Xian and 2 servant girls into the palace. Because of her appearance, there was quite a commotion in the palace. Ever since she had fasted, Chu Qingyan had rarely appeared in public. However, because of that promotion, she had unknowingly become one of the most sought-after people in the capital city. The product was good and effective. After many wives of officials used it, the number of times their husbands went out to flirt with other women decreased. After the ladies of famous families used it, their marriage rate greatly increased. In addition, Chu Qingyan intentionally or unintentionally revealed the maintenance method, which won the hearts of many women. Therefore, when the rumors about Xiao Ran and her spread, many people remained silent. Things like this that tarnished one's reputation, as long as word of mouth spread, it wouldn't take long for one's reputation to be tarnished. Without these people adding fuel to the fire, as long as a new rumor appeared, the previous rumor would quickly be covered up. As soon as Chu Qingyan appeared, many of the women stood up to greet her. In the past, this scene appeared because she was Xiao Su's fiancée. Now, it was all because of her own efforts that people were willing to approach her. In today's world, why would they need to rely on anyone for support? There was a reason for the seating arrangements for today's banquet. It was basically arranged according to the rank of the officials. Chu Qingyan and Xiao Su's seats were relatively closer to the front. As soon as Chu Qingyan sat down, she was warmly greeted by the girls beside her. "Qingyan, long time no see. How have you been?" Jin Yuqing, who was very familiar with her, smiled and nodded at her. "Yes, the weather is too hot. We don't have many chances to go out and see each other. It's rare that we can get together tonight." Tang Lanhan also smiled and spoke. Jin Yueqing was the legitimate daughter of the Minister of Works, and Tang Lanhan was the legitimate daughter of the Minister of Revenue. These two ministers were on the left minister's side. Chu Qingyan was not surprised that they were arranged to be by her side. However, putting aside their identities, she had a good impression of these two girls. Last time at Hugua Temple, it was thanks to their help that her sales were able to go so smoothly. Thanks to the good fortune of you girls, other than the hot weather, everything else is fine. I see that your complexions have improved a lot recently. Chu Qingyan also took the initiative to chat. Jin Yueqing immediately covered her face and said shyly, "Is that so? I feel that after using that facial cleanser, my skin has become cleaner. Also, the more I look at my eyebrows, the more satisfied I am." Tang Lanhan smiled and teased, "Qingyan, you don't know. Yueqing has always disliked the shape of her eyebrows. A few days ago, she listened to the owner of the extension products and trimmed her eyebrows. Now, she shows off her eyebrows whenever she meets people. Don't tell me how shameless she is." Jin Yueqing immediately raised her hand and patted her lightly. "Save some face for me. Don't tell others everything." Chu Qingyan and Tang Lanhan looked at each other and grinned from ear to ear. Girls always talked about beauty and gossip when they chatted. Jin Yueqing then said mysteriously, "Did you guys hear about what happened to the eldest young master of the Fu family a few days ago?" Chu Qingyan's hand that was holding the teacup paused. She naturally knew about this because her big ice cube was the mastermind. Tang Lanhan covered her mouth with a handkerchief and said mockingly, "This matter has become the laughingstock of the circle. How could we not know? This Fu Onlai has done all kinds of evil. Usually, he uses his status to be arrogant and despotic. In the past, no one dared to deal with him. Now, he's kicked an iron plate. How satisfying." Jin Yueqing didn't hide her disgust for Fu Onlai at all. Tang Lanhan nodded and then said in a low voice, "It's strange. Rumors say that Fu Onlai provoked someone he shouldn't have, and that's why he was schemed against like this. Not only did he lose his reputation, but more importantly, I heard that he was traumatized. But I don't understand. Who is the person who has a higher status than the right prime minister and can't be provoked?" Jin Yueqing didn't think too much about it. She waved her hand and said, "Who cares who did it? Let this dissolute disciple have a taste of the consequences." It can be said that all the women in the capital city have vented their anger. I heard that the people worship the person behind the scenes. They almost worship him. When Chu Qingyan heard their discussion, if it wasn't for her strong self-control, she would have laughed out loud. It seemed that her big ice cube had done a good deed of slaying evil. But in the blink of an eye, the two young ladies' topic changed to another topic. "Qingyan, you can be considered a member of the imperial family. Have you heard about which prince His Majesty will arrange for the marriage of the Southern Song princess?" Jin Yueqing looked at her curiously and blinked. She shook her head, "I haven't heard about this." "Why, do you have any gossip?" At this time, Tang Lanhan took over, "We're not too sure either. But we heard that His Majesty has asked the second prince to go to the relay station more often. But it seems that he hasn't met the Southern Song princess. Xiao Yao." Chu Qingyan thought back to the handsome and carefree Prince Xiao Yao who was standing at the foot of the palace walls. He did not have any power, and he lived a carefree life. Thinking about it, the West Xian Arch could very well have betrothed her to Xiao Yao. Whether it was for public or private reasons, it was a good place for Pang Zhijing. But she hadn't heard about this matter. She would ask the big ice cube when he came. Speak of the devil. She had just put down the teacup when a familiar figure appeared in her field of vision. He was still as handsome as before, standing tall and straight with an awe-inspiring aura. She couldn't help but smile at him. Chapter 1158. Xiao Su's appearance caused another stir. The civil and military officials were intimidated by his aura and admired his youth. The youths worshipped him as the god of war, capable in both civil and military matters, protecting the country, and his reputation spread far and wide. The noble ladies admired his outstanding temperament, and he was a hero in the hearts of the common people. Xiao Ho looked at Xiao Su, who walked in with a clear gaze. His fingers lightly pinched the cup as a meaningful smile appeared on his face. This prince wants to see if you have the ability to walk out of all the checkpoints I've set for you tonight. Xiao Su ignored everyone's gazes and walked straight to his seat. Tang Lanhan and Jin Yuqing immediately returned to their seats to give the young couple some space. Chu Qingyan smiled at the two, then raised her head and asked the people sitting down, "Has everything been settled?" Xiao Su took the cup she handed over with a smile, giving her a unique gentleness that others couldn't enjoy. "The troops have been deployed, so there aren't any big problems." She nodded. At such a large palace banquet, the most worrying thing was unforeseen events. As long as no one risked their lives to enter the palace to assassinate, then there would be no problems. "That's right, I just heard that His Majesty seems to have the intention of appointing a marriage between the second prince and the southern Song princess," she asked in a low voice. Xiao Su slightly raised his brows. Recently, he had been busy with official matters and rarely paid attention to these matters. "I didn't know about this matter." "Imperial father has such a plan. But if it's second brother, it's not impossible." Second brother had long reached the age of marriage, but because of his undisciplined personality, he kept delaying it. Now that the southern Song princess's status was awkward, it wouldn't be appropriate no matter which prince she was betrothed to. However, whether it was status, character, or future cooperation between the two countries, second brother was a good choice. Then it seems that the answer will be revealed tonight. Chu Qingyan's eyes lit up in anticipation. This palace banquet was just a cover for the diplomatic envoy group to pick a suitable son-in-law for the southern blue princess. No matter who it was a matter worth being curious about. Although she didn't have a good impression of Xiao Ho, he and Xiao Ran were both worthy candidates. Just as she thought of Xiao Ran, she felt a gaze fall on her. She raised her head and saw Xiao Ran, who she hadn't seen since returning from the Hugua temple. Although the window paper between them hadn't been broken, she still felt unnatural when facing Xiao Ran. Xiao Ran started paying attention to her from the moment he entered the palace, but she only had eyes for his eldest brother. She didn't see him who came in with his eldest brother. This made him felt a bit disappointed, but when he thought of what might happen tonight, he became excited. Although he didn't know what method his mother's, if he was, it would be, and he didn't know how. After Xiao Su and Xiao Ran entered the palace, most people's eyes revolved around them. One was the popular lord and the other was the little prince who was doted on by His Majesty. No matter which one he climbed, his future would be limitless. Yu Tianyue sat to the side and supported her chin with her hands, complaining, "It would be great if I could sit next to big sister Qingyan. I'm so happy to chat with her. Her words are like a spring breeze. I can also learn a lot of stories that aren't available in the capital." The seats are arranged according to their titles. "Naturally, we can't sit with them." Qi Lingyi heard her complaints and replied with a smile. Ever since Xiao Su had appeared, her attention had been fixed on him. She had been looking forward to meeting him before she came. Now that he was here, it was as if a pool of spring water had been disturbed. She was uneasy and her cheeks couldn't help but heat up when she looked at him. Yu Tianyue didn't notice the change in her friend's expression. She turned to look at the person opposite her. "Look, everyone is dressed very carefully today. Even someone like Jing Mingzhu has put a lot of effort into her outfit." Yu Tianyue said this because a few days ago, a new batch of jewelry had arrived in the capital. Jing Mingzhu and Meng Shishu had both taken a fancy to the treasure of the shop. Sparks flew, and in the end, the highest bidder won the jewelry, which was won by Jing Mingzhu. Meng Shishu's resentment couldn't be appeased. For a moment, she became the topic of conversation after dinner. That's natural. To be able to gather all the noble ladies and gentlemen of the capital together is only a few times a year, so everyone cherishes this opportunity. Qi Lingyi's mind wasn't here, so she blurted out some of her words without thinking, causing Yu Tianyue to take a few more glances. This doesn't seem like something Lingyi Jiejie would say. Yu Tianyue pursed her lips and smiled. Qi Lingyi finally realized that she had misspoken. She immediately lowered her eyes and smiled to muddle through, I heard it from others. Don't speak nonsense. The two of them chatted and laughed until they came to an end. Because it was still early for the banquet, the Sichuan emperor and his concubines had yet to arrive. Everyone exchanged pleasantries. The men talked about politics and academics, and the women talked about needlework and beauty. It was a harmonious atmosphere. However, after drinking 2 cups of tea, Xiao Ho felt his eyebrows twitch. He turned to look at Pang Zhijing, who wasn't far away. She seemed to be too quiet tonight. He thought for a moment, then gave a few instructions to his subordinates. He covered his mouth and coughed as he left. Soon, a palace servant appeared beside Pang Zhijing. After hearing the palace servant's words, she subconsciously looked at Xiao Ho's seat, but it was already empty. She didn't want to go out at this time, but in the end, she still found an excuse to leave the hall. Under the palace servant's guidance, she stood under a remote palace wall. Xiao Ho, who had ordered her to come out, was standing not far away. Calling me out at this time, aren't you afraid that someone will see and make an issue out of it? Pang Zhijing clenched her fists and preemptively said. Xiao Ho was a little surprised by her stubbornness. He smiled lightly and said, this prince is afraid that a noble person like Princess will forget things and forget our plan. Therefore, this prince specially invited Princess out to reiterate the goal of our cooperation tonight. Pang Zhijing thought it was as expected. She said in a bad mood, Xiao Ho, do you really think that everything is under your control and that there won't be any accidents? Xiao Ho looked at her vigilantly. What does Princess mean? Pang Zhijing waved her hand and said in a sickly voice, all right, don't worry. I will follow your request and choose Xiao Su when your imperial father asks who he wants to marry. Don't make a fuss over nothing. Although he was still a little worried, Xiao Ho didn't continue the topic when he saw her haggard face. You know, this prince is looking forward to Princess's next performance. Pang Zhijing smiled calmly at him and said, I can't leave for too long, so I'll be leaving first. After she turned around, she took a deep breath and slowly loosened her clenched fists. She didn't want to be so obedient this time. She didn't want to be a puppet anymore. Xiao Ho watched her departing figure and was silent for a moment. In the end, he also followed her back into the hall. Chapter 1159. In such a bustling moment, no one noticed if anyone had left or returned. Thus, Pang Zhijing and Xiao Ho's departure and return didn't attract much attention. As the eunuchs sang, Sichuan Emperor and the Empress appeared hand in hand. Long live the Emperor, long live the Empress, long live the Empress, long live the Empress, long live the Empress. Everyone knelt down and saluted, their voices mighty and imposing. Sichuan Emperor and Empress Liang sat together at the head of the table. He looked at the officials and womenfolk below and waved his hand, rise. Thank you, Your Majesty. Everyone stood up and retreated to their seats. The West Xian Emperor looked towards the seats on the right, which were specially set up for the Southern Heavens diplomatic envoy group. He stroked his beard and smiled, have the esteemed envoys of your country had a good rest these past few days? Tuali cupped his hands and said in a clear voice, thanks to your Majesty's good fortune, we ate, drank, and slept well in the relay station as if it were our own home. This is all thanks to your Majesty's hospitality. Sichuan Emperor nodded happily, of course. Since you've come, you're a guest. We were worried that we wouldn't receive you well. This is good. As he spoke, Sichuan Emperor's gaze turned to Pang Zhijing, who was sitting quietly at the side. He revealed an amiable smile, Princess, I heard that you've been walking around the capital these past few days. Did you gain anything? Pang Zhijing was startled when her name was suddenly called, but she quickly calmed down and replied, Sichuan is a land of outstanding heroes. There are sceneries everywhere. It's much more fun than our southern song. During this time, Zhijing also made many friends. This trip wasn't in vain. The princess's words are more valiant than our Sichuan women. You're a heroic girl. You're worthy of being Princess Mingzhu that the Southern Sung Emperor has painstakingly cultivated. Natural and unrestrained, you don't lose to the men of your region. Sichuan Emperor exchanged a few pleasantries, then changed the topic. Now, let's invite the princess and the envoys to enjoy the wonderful program that our country has specially prepared for you. It's to comfort you from the hardships of your journey. As soon as Sichuan Emperor finished speaking, singers and dancers immediately swarmed in from outside the palace. Music played on both sides, and the entire hall was bustling with noise and excitement. As Chu Qingyan was seriously watching the performance, a shadow suddenly appeared in the corner of her eyes. She couldn't help but turn her head to look and saw a figure sneaking up to her seat. As if sensing that someone had noticed him, he turned around and winked at her, telling her not to make a sound. Wasn't that Xiao Yao? Xiao Su also noticed him. Why are you so late? Xiao Yao's seat was right below his, so it was very convenient for the two of them to talk. Don't mention it. I'm so tired these past few days. Xiao Yao waved his hand, his expression full of grief. Did someone bully you? Xiao Yao had been drinking her good wine recently, and Chu Qingyan was no longer as distant from him as before. Because of Xiao Su, she was much closer to him, and she could joke around with him now. Hearing this, Xiao Yao glared at his imperial brother. If the upper beam is not straight, the lower beam will be crooked. This one of yours even dares to tease me. The eldest sister-in-law is like a mother. In the future, her seniority will be higher than yours. Shouldn't she be concerned about you? With the wine cups intertwined and the lights dimmed, in this leisurely and lively atmosphere, Xiao Su's aura was less austere and more gentle. His words were much more relaxed. Xiao Yao shook his head and sighed. Sure enough, once you have a sister-in-law, you've forgotten your brother. I'm so pitiful. I don't know what imperial father is thinking these past few days, making me go to the relay station every day. He said that he wants me to contribute to the friendship between our two countries, but in reality, he's simply ignoring me. I can't even see his shadow all day. Hearing this, Xiao Su and Chu Qingyan couldn't help but look at each other. Xiao Su muttered, Imperial father intends for you to marry the Southern Sung princess. I don't know. Xiao Yao immediately waved his hand. He smiled and said, You also know that I'm used to being free and unfettered. It's too difficult to tie me down with a marriage contract. Besides, I don't have the fortune to enjoy this kind of marriage. The Southern Sung people were ruthless. Maybe this princess was unruly by nature. He didn't want to marry a tigress to serve in the Fu. That was simply too torturous. It's hard to disobey the monarch's orders. Maybe His Majesty has this plan. Chu Qingyan added. She rolled her eyes and wanted to speak for Pang Zhijing. Also, I've met this princess a few times. She's a cute and innocent girl. Maybe you two will get along well. This topic was left to the little fellow to deal with. Xiao Su didn't want to get involved. Xiao Yao resolutely shook his head. Then, he mysteriously leaned over and said, No matter who the marriage partner is in the end, I have some gossip here. I don't know if you two want to hear it. After saying this, Xiao Su uninterestedly drank the wine in front of him. Only Chu Qingyan calmly looked at him. Xiao Yao's face was defeated. Ai, you two, forget it, forget it. I'll tell you. He lowered his voice and said, I think there's something fishy about this Southern Sung princess and third brother. After saying this, he thought that he would be surprised by the two. He didn't expect that one was still uninterested and the other was still calm and unruffled. Hey, you can't be like this. In any case, I've shared such secret information with you too. Xiao Yao mumbled. It's not that we don't want to support you. It's just that we've already received this information. Chu Qingyan kindly explained. Although the relationship between Pang Zhijing and Xiao Ho was unclear, from their private interactions, it wouldn't be right to say that there wasn't any relationship. Did you discover something? At this time, Xiao Su spoke. Xiao Yao raised his eyebrows and nodded, That's right. didn't I go to the relay station yesterday? It's a pity that I didn't see the princess, so I simply drank some wine nearby. Afterwards, I saw the princess return in a daze, as if she had suffered a huge blow. I asked around and found out that she returned in the direction of third brother's residence. Don't you think this is a coincidence? This made Chu Qingyan surprised. Pang Zhijing had just visited their prince's residence yesterday. When she left, she was still very happy. Why did she suddenly run to Xiao Ho's residence? Second prince, then according to what you said, the person who will marry the princess today is a bit uncertain. Could it be that Pang Zhijing liked Xiao Ho? Xiao Yao laughed mischievously. He crossed his legs and said to his eldest brother, I have a bold guess. Do you want to hear it? After he finished speaking, he recalled their previous behavior and shook his head. He didn't want to ask for more trouble and went straight to the point. Imperial father's choice is me, but the Southern Blue's choice is you, Imperial brother. How is that possible? Chu Qingyan's eyebrows twitched and she subconsciously asked. Xiao Yao smiled mysteriously, if we look at the relationship between third brother and Southern Blue, it's not impossible. After all, he can take the opportunity to remove the military power from eldest brother's hands. Southern Blue was a large country and also a fierce opponent. The imperial court wouldn't hand over such an important military force to eldest brother. Therefore, if he won the beauty, it would be equivalent to giving up power. That depends on whether I agree or not. Xiao Su coldly said. Chapter 1160. Although Big Ice Cube's words reassured her, Chu Qingyan was still worried that she would get into trouble at a time like this. Sensing her uneasiness, Xiao Su placed his hand on the back of her hand and patted it. Don't worry, I'm here for you. No one can force me to do anything. Chu Qingyan smiled and nodded at him. Xiao Yao rubbed his nose as he watched the two interact warmly. It seemed that eldest brother didn't know how to flirt, but it depended on who he was dealing with. Sigh, why did he suddenly feel lonely? No, he should just spend the rest of his life with his fine wine and delicacies. Consort Yu, who was sitting below the Sichuan emperor, looked in her son's direction. As expected, this silly child's gaze never left Chu Qingyan. Consort Yu was a bit resentful that he didn't fight for her. However, he was still the child she gave birth to after carrying him for 10 months, so she couldn't blame him. Thus, she used the excuse of leaving the hall as an excuse to leave with Jade Rabbit. The two stopped at the entrance of a hidden corridor. There were eunuchs guarding the corridor, so no one would be able to discover this place easily. Consort Yu waited for a while before a figure appeared in front of her. How are the arrangements? Consort Yu got straight to the point when she saw the person. The person who came was dressed as a eunuch from the Moon Palace. When he heard Consort Yu's question, he lowered his head and replied respectfully, We've already made the preparations. When the time comes, we'll lure Chu Qingyan to the edge of the pond and arrange for the fourth prince to be nearby. As long as Chu Qingyan falls into the water, the fourth prince will jump into the water to save her. Then, your highness will get what you want. Consort Yu revealed a proud smile when she heard this. As long as Ranner saved Chu Qingyan, then no matter what engagement she had, it would be the same as losing her chastity to Ranner. After all, men and women shouldn't touch each other. Once they had physical contact, she would never be able to get married again. Moreover, this way, she and Ranner would be an illegitimate union. She wouldn't be able to take the position of first consort. She could get rid of any concubine. This way, she could satisfy Ranner's wishes without affecting the overall situation. When she thought of this, Consort Yu became more and more satisfied with today's arrangements. She stood under the moonlight, her figure as graceful as a flower, but gave off a sinister feeling. After Imperial Concubine Moon and the others left, the man dressed as a eunuch raised his head and looked in the direction they left with a smile. The dim yellow light of the lanterns shone on his face. Wasn't this Xuanqi Zimo? The books say that only vile people and women are difficult to deal with. Sure enough, it's true. He shook his head, then immediately lowered his head and prepared to leave. After taking a few steps, he almost bumped into someone. Xuanqi Zimo immediately raised his head. When he saw who it was, he cried out, "Young palace master, why are you here?" His master was usually very careful and didn't like to do things personally. He didn't expect to see him here today. Higashio Motetsu was also dressed in eunuch robes. His devilishly charming face was slightly more adorned, and he didn't look as arrogant as he usually did. However, his posture was still languid. He leaned against the wall and took out the folding fan at his waist, fanning himself casually. A banquet between two countries. Sounds interesting, so this young master came to join in the fun. Xuanqi Zimo shook his head inwardly. The young palace master was probably worried about today's operation, so he came to supervise it. From the looks of it, the young palace master really took great pains to care for Miss Chu. He was worried about her all the way until she was plotted against and in danger. Higashio Motetsu looked at the hustle and bustle of the palace. His expression was calm, and his long hair fluttered in the evening breeze. He seemed to emit an otherworldly aura. Under the moonlight, he was extremely beautiful. The corners of his mouth curled up slightly, then he disappeared into the darkness. Since his young palace master had left, Xuanqi Zimo immediately left as well. His mission tonight was very important. Inside the main hall. After 3 rounds of wine, the singers and dancers temporarily retreated, and the music stopped. Only the lingering sound of the music lingered in the ears. Sichuan Emperor raised his wine cup and said to the group of Southern Blue envoys, "This cup of wine is a toast to the ministers who traveled thousands of miles to Sichuan. Thank you for your hard work." Tori and the others immediately stood up and returned the toast. "Your Majesty is too serious. Diplomatic relations between two countries are important. We are honored to be able to represent our countries here." The two sides drank the wine in one gulp. Tori didn't leave immediately after drinking. He said in a rough voice, "We have already sent the draft of the agreement back to our country for the king to look over. The king has no objections to the content." Sichuan Emperor revealed a satisfied expression. "That's good. Then, we can choose an auspicious day to sign this agreement, and it will come into effect immediately." This matter was finally settled. Everyone in the main hall was excited and happy. This way, the two countries would be able to maintain diplomatic relations for at least 100 years. The common people would no longer have to endure the pain of war, and the civil and military officials would be able to enjoy peaceful days. The hall was bustling with noise and excitement. Everyone was immersed in joy. Only Xiao Su frowned. He thought that the contents of the agreement would be discussed several times, but he didn't expect the Southern Blue envoys to agree so easily. This made him feel uneasy. At this moment, Sichuan Emperor raised his hand to silence everyone. When everyone's eyes were focused on him, he turned to look at Peng Zhijing. "Princess, today is a great day for the two countries to establish diplomatic relations. Before you left, we heard from your imperial father that he wanted to choose a suitable husband for you. He also asked us to keep an eye out for you. We see that the princess is a woman with her own opinions. Why don't you take advantage of today? My men are all in the hall, so you can choose for yourself." Actually, everyone knew that there was an ulterior motive for holding this palace banquet. For example, at this moment, choosing a prince consort. This segment would come sooner or later. Although Peng Zhijing was mentally prepared, she was still a little nervous. She stood up slowly and welcomed everyone's probing gazes. She smiled and said, "Your Majesty, are you really letting Zhijing choose for herself? What if I don't choose well? Wouldn't it be a waste of your Majesty's good intentions?" If these words came from someone else's mouth, it would be a bit ungrateful and shameless. But when it came from Peng Zhijing, she had a foreign charm. Her words were frank and unpretentious. She gave people a kind of bright and lively temperament, which was very suitable. A monarch's words are not a joke. Sichuan Emperor stroked his beard and smiled majestically. Then it would be impolite for Zhijing to refuse. Peng Zhijing smiled proudly and did not refuse. She was like a queen, and below her were her royal subjects, allowing her to choose. Many people were envious of her power to be able to choose her ideal husband. Unfortunately, no one knew the torment she was suffering in her heart. Zhijing has never interacted with any of the noble children present. I have only heard of the 4 princes. The second prince has a carefree personality and does not care about women. Zhijing is afraid that I will fall in love with him. The 4th prince is about the same age as Zhijing, but Zhijing hopes to find a husband who is a few years older than Zhijing. His Royal Highness already has a fiancé, so Zhijing will not snatch his beauty away. Xiao Ho's smiling face instantly cracked. Did this brat know what she was saying? He had actually excluded his 3 royal brothers from the list. Before he could react, Peng Zhijing dropped another bomb. So, in the end, Zhijing feels that the 3rd prince's temperament and appearance are all Fu Zhijing's standards. Xiao Ho crushed the cup in his hand. Chapter 1161. The palace fell silent for a moment. The wine cup in the Sichuan emperor's hand tilted slightly, and the wine in the cup almost spilled out. Fortunately, Chao Ji, who was next to him, reminded him not to lose his composure. Chu Qingyan was also stunned because the result was very unexpected. She heard Xiao Yao's heavy sigh of relief. Although her big ice cube was not chosen, and her heart was relieved, she vaguely felt that something was wrong. Perhaps no one would have thought that Peng Zhijing's choice would be Xiao Ho. He was rumored to be a sick prince with no real power. After Peng Zhijing finished speaking, she did not dare to look in the direction of Xiao Ho. Instead, she straightened her neck and looked at the Sichuan emperor's position. Your Majesty, this is Zhijing's choice. The group of envoys around her seemed to be shocked by her sudden change of choice. Torai anxiously whispered, Princess, what are you doing? Why is it different from what we planned? Words spoken are like spilled water. It can't be taken back. Peng Zhijing did not directly answer his question, but revealed a strange smile. Since she decided to resist today, she would resist to the end. As the saying goes, there can be no construction without destruction. She had no regrets. Since the princess had said so, it was useless for Tori and the others to be anxious. From this, it could be seen that the princess was out of control. They must convey today's matter to His Highness the Crown Prince as soon as possible. Peng Zhijing's choice of Xiao Ho surprised the Sichuan emperor, but for him, it did not make much of a difference. His original choice was Xiao Ho, who was about the same status as Xiao Ho. He had also considered Xiao Ho before, but he was worried that Nansang Kingdom would not be satisfied with Xiao Ho's body. Now that Peng Zhijing had suggested it herself, it could not be better. The West Xian Emperor laughed loudly and said, Princess has a keen eye. This son of mine has brilliant literary talent and is humorous and witty. He's someone who understands the cold and the heat. He's the best candidate for a son-in-law. Your Majesty is right. Although Ho-er's mother is no longer by his side, this consort treats him like her own son. He is filial and courteous. He is a rare child. Princess has good taste. Empress Liang agreed. As long as the princess didn't choose Su-er today, it didn't matter who it was. Peng Zhijing's pale face squeezed out a shy expression. After he finished speaking, Sichuan Emperor turned to look at Xiao Ho, who had been silent all this time. His tone became more serious. Ho-er, the princess favors you very much. What do you think of this marriage? At this time, everyone's eyes fell on the second most important protagonist of this matter. It was Prince Yi, Xiao Ho, who was sitting in the corner and didn't make a sound. No one would notice him. The Sichuan Emperor's question made Peng Zhijing involuntarily clench the hem of her skirt. She didn't tell anyone about this decision. Presumably, it was a great blow to Xiao Ho. She didn't know how he would respond. She began to worry. Would he refuse such a marriage? If he refused, then what should she do? Just as she was letting her imagination run wild, Xiao Ho stood up unsteadily. Because he had been recuperating for many years, his body was weak. In everyone's eyes, he was too weak to stand up. His appearance made everyone even more suspicious of the princess's brain. There were so many outstanding princes out there, but she chose a sickly one instead. Xiao Ho didn't care about other people's gazes. He stood in his seat with his head lowered and his eyes lowered. As usual, he stood aloof from worldly affairs. His voice was gentle, and there seemed to be a faint smile when he spoke. Thanks to the princess's love, I have no objection to this marriage. A few subordinates stood beside Xiao Ho. When they heard that their master had agreed to this marriage, they were secretly anxious. Unfortunately, there was nothing they could do. Only Xiao Ho, who was standing in the hall, understood that once Pang Zhijing said this, no matter what his wish was, he had no right to refuse. Because in the eyes of the emperor, as long as it wasn't Xiao Su or Xiao Ran, anyone could get married. Therefore, he was a pawn that the emperor could abandon at will. He was also a sacrifice in the struggle for the imperial power. The marriage bestowed upon him this time was a huge obstacle in his path to greatness. He turned slightly and looked at the person who hadn't looked at him since he agreed to this marriage. He didn't expect that she would be the one to checkmate him in the end. This little white rabbit who usually used the tiger's might to intimidate others. After the marriage was decided, everyone was happy. There were people who went over to congratulate them, and the scene became lively again. It was very lively on the surface, but no one knew how many disputes there were under the surface. Empress Liang was in a good mood as she said to everyone in the hall, "Tonight, this empress has also arranged for a program to admire the lotus flowers and lanterns. After this, there will be palace servants to lead the way. I hope that everyone will be able to enjoy themselves to the fullest tonight." After this arrangement was announced, joyful expressions appeared on the faces of the young boys and girls. They were all at an age where they wanted to have fun. Now that they could enjoy the scenery with so many people accompanying them, their excited hearts couldn't wait any longer. It was as if they had already flown to the lotus pond. Soon, palace servants holding lanterns appeared at the entrance of the hall. Those who wanted to stay to drink and eat could stay. Those who wanted to leave to admire the lotus flowers and lanterns could leave. In an instant, there were people coming and going. There were handsome men and beautiful women. Chu Qingyan was hesitating about what to do next when she saw Xiao Yao stand up. She couldn't help but ask, "You're also going to look at the lanterns? What's so good about lanterns? If I like, I can look at them every day." Xiao Yao waved his hand, not interested in them at all. "Then what are you doing?" she asked in confusion. Xiao Yao chuckled. "Of course I'm going to slip away. If it weren't for Imperial Father forcing me to come, I wouldn't have come. Since I don't have a part in the political marriage, what's the point of staying? If I don't leave now, when will I leave? Otherwise, if Imperial Father remembers me, I won't be able to leave. Before you leave, you should send someone to inform Imperial Father," Xiao Su reminded indifferently. Xiao Yao gave a light humph, but before he left, he lowered his voice and said with schadenfreude, "I think I saw that third Imperial brother was very unhappy. This is a bit like shooting yourself in the foot. I'm starting to think more highly of this princess." After he finished speaking, he didn't wait for anyone to react before he patted his sleeves and left. Chu Qingyan also noticed what Xiao Yao said, but she was more concerned about Pang Zhijing's behavior. Ever since the engagement was decided, Pang Zhijing had been silent. Even when she smiled, it was a bit forced. She really didn't know what happened after she left yesterday. "Qingyan, what are you sitting there for? Let's go look at the flowers together." Tang Lanhan pulled Jin Yueqing and waved at her from afar. Before Chu Qingyan could respond, they had already disappeared. She couldn't help pursing her lips into a smile. They really were a group of youthful girls. She also wanted to go out, but she felt that the big ice cube wouldn't like that kind of environment. Suddenly, the back of her hand was covered by a large, warm hand. She turned to look. "I'll take you to look at the lanterns," Xiao Su said in a calm and gentle voice. At this moment, she felt that the big ice cube was too tempting. She really wanted to throw herself at him. Chapter 1162. The two most important goals of the palace banquet had been achieved, so in the next segment, everyone could enjoy themselves to their heart's content. There was no need for them to anxiously watch what happened next. To Chu Qingyan, this was the first time Big Ice Cube had taken the initiative to invite her to play, and it was such a poetic matter. It was simply unprecedented. She could not refuse and did not even act reserved. She stood up along with him. Because their clothes were very long and it was dark, no one could see that the two of them were tightly holding each other's hands. But before she left, she still had some conscience and was concerned about her new friend. She told Big Ice Cube to wait outside the hall before she turned and walked towards Pang Zhijing. When she walked in front of Pang Zhijing, she realized that this person was actually daydreaming in such a chaotic place. She was puzzled but did not say anything. She tilted her head and invited, "May I ask this beautiful lady, are you interested in walking arm in arm with me?" Chu Qingyan's voice startled Pang Zhijing. She raised her head and saw that it was her. The distant smile on her face immediately turned warm. "It's you." There were so many people chattering here just now. It really affected the mood. "Your arrival is like a clear stream in the muddy sea." "What are you talking about?" "Be careful not to be overheard by others." Chu Qingyan reminded her softly with a stern face. But from her words and expression, it was hard to hide her fondness for her. She did not know why, but when she saw this young lady, she liked her from the bottom of her heart. Pang Zhijing chuckled and stood up. She casually tidied up the creases on her skirt and wanted to hold her hand. But she retracted her hand halfway and stuck out her tongue. "Forget it, in this kind of place, it's better for us to keep our distance. I don't want to cause you trouble." Chu Qingyan shook her head and laughed. Pang Zhijing did not delay any longer and said a few words to the envoys. Although they did not approve of her being too close to Xiao Su and Chu Qingyan, in this kind of occasion, it was still necessary to maintain a good relationship on the surface. So they could only let Pang Zhijing follow Chu Qingyan. "Why do I feel that as a princess, you have even less freedom than a subject?" Chu Qingyan didn't miss the reluctance in Tori and the other's eyes as she asked in a low voice. Pang Zhijing shrugged and grumbled, "That's right. Anyway, I'm just a victim of a political transaction. It's good enough that I can make a living. I don't want anything else." She could hear the self-deprecating tone in her words. As a member of the imperial family, the amount of power one enjoyed corresponded to the amount of responsibility one had to bear. There was no doubt about this. Chu Qingyan did not ask any more questions. The two of them walked to the entrance of the hall. Pang Zhijing caught a glimpse of a figure and suddenly laughed. "I knew it. How could you leave your lord behind and ask me out on such a beautiful day? So it turns out that we're together. You made me think that I'm more important than your lord." Her voice wasn't soft, so both Xiao Su and Chu Qingyan heard it. Before the latter could say anything, the former glanced at her coldly, then turned to look at his little fellow with a slightly resentful gaze, as if complaining about why she brought such a big lantern. Chu Qingyan naturally understood the meaning of the big ice cube's gaze. She tugged at his sleeve and said in a low voice, "You can't forget your friends when you're in love." "I just saw her sitting there alone. She looked like she had lost her soul and was quite lonely." Xiao Su was silent for a while, then he casually asked Pang Zhijing, "Do you need this prince to help you call third brother?" Pang Zhijing was just shamelessly teasing the two of them, but she didn't expect that Xiao Su would counter her the moment they met. She didn't even have the time to hide from Xiao Ho, so how could she dare to walk with him? She immediately waved her hand to refuse. "No, no, no. He's not in good health, so it's better if he doesn't come out to catch the wind. Let's go, don't block the traffic here." As she said that, Pang Zhijing immediately led her people to walk in front. When the two people behind her saw Pang Zhijing's behavior, they couldn't help but raise their brows. "Why do I feel like the princess is a little afraid of third brother?" When the two of them walked together, Chu Qingyan quietly asked the person beside her. Xiao Su said indifferently, "It doesn't seem like it." "Do you know the reason?" She looked up and asked curiously. There's a problem with the cooperation. This princess showed off her courage in a moment of bravery and turned the tables on him at the palace banquet. Now that her courage has run out, she can only run away. Xiao Su easily deduced the cause and effect of everything that had happened at the banquet today, as if he had been a part of it. Chu Qingyan pursed her lips. Although it seems like this princess is on the same side as third prince, I still want to befriend her. Xiao Su knew what she was worried about and raised his brows. From the moment she betrayed him and chose her own husband, perhaps she's no longer on the same side. On the contrary, she should be afraid that Xiao Ho will take revenge on her. Ah! She was shocked. Then what should we do? The two of them happened to be walking in the dark. Xiao Su raised a hand to pinch her nose, his voice affectionate. That's not what you should be worried about right now. Since she has decided to take this path, she should have her own plans. She felt that the big ice cube was right. She wanted to say something but was interrupted by him. Let's go, I'll take you to admire the flowers. After saying that, he held her fingers in his palm. She subconsciously looked up at him. His silver face was shining under the moonlight, hazy and cold. The cool night breeze passed through their fingertips, bringing with it a cool throbbing. She only felt as if her heart had melted into a pool of water. It turned out that when you're with the person you love, you don't have to do anything grand or beautiful. Just holding hands like this was a very romantic and warm thing. Pang Zhijing was having fun alone and was about to turn back to call them, but when she turned around, she saw the two people walking in the dark, leaning against each other. Although they didn't say anything, their eyes were full of words of love. The words that she wanted to call out were stuck in her throat. It was said that the King of England was incomparably cold. No one had ever been able to see any emotion other than indifference on his face. Actually, this was what outsiders thought, but they couldn't see it and speculated it. When such a proud son of heaven was gentle, it was simply not something that ordinary people could enjoy. She tilted her head and smiled lightly. Then she secretly turned around and slipped away. With such a beautiful scene, she didn't want to be a third wheel. In the palace. After Xiao Su left with Chu Qingyan, Xiao Ran, who was drinking alone at the side, looked at the backs of the two people and hesitated in his heart whether to follow them out. But when he thought of his mother's previous instructions, to wait for orders, he suppressed his anxious mood and waited. While Xiao Ran was absent-minded, Jing Mingzhu, who was sitting opposite him, had been paying attention to him. She was thinking about how to invite him to go to the lanterns with her and shorten the distance between the two of them. And at this moment, a palace servant walked to Xiao Ran's side and whispered a few words. His eyes lit up, and he put down his wine cup and strode away. Jing Mingzhu saw this and immediately followed him out. Chapter 1163. In the palace, there was a long river that led to the outside of the palace. The water from the small bridges, lotus ponds, and ponds all gathered here, so the lantern tour this time followed the long river. However, before the lantern tour, Xiao Su and Chu Qingyan first walked towards the lotus pond. Although they had already participated in a lotus viewing poetry gathering last time, when all was said and done, none of the lotuses in the capital could compare to the ones meticulously cultivated in the palace. Therefore, there were many people gathered here to admire the flowers. With so many people, they were worried that they would get separated. Most of the people here were young, and they did not have such a deep concept of official status. Children running and jumping could easily bump into people. Xiao Su brought her to his side and protected her as they walked. With him around, Chu Qingyan did not need to be distracted. She looked around and asked, where's Xijing? How did she disappear in the blink of an eye? She must have slipped away. When Pang Zhijing left, she had winked at him. It seemed that she was a discerning person. Xiao Su replied indifferently. As long as no one came to take up the little fellow's time, he did not care about anything else. Chu Qingyan sighed regretfully. I wanted to talk to her, but forget it. She has a maid by her side, so I don't have to worry. As she spoke, she quickly threw the pity to the back of her mind. Hugging his arm, she tilted her head and asked brightly, "Then where are we going first?" She did not know that every time she showed this childish side of her, it moved him so much. Xiao Su's heart tightened. He reached out and covered the back of her hand. Taking a deep breath, he resisted the urge to take her to a corner and ravage her in his arms. He coughed lightly and looked away. Pointing casually, he said, "Let's go there." When he finished speaking, the person beside him exclaimed in surprise, "Big Ice Cube, you really walked into the human world today and caught fire." He was stunned and looked in the direction. When he saw clearly, he could not help but want to facepalm. The place he had hurriedly pointed to was actually the most crowded place in front of them. He really did not get close to such a lively atmosphere, and he did not like to interact with so many people. However, hearing the little fellow's excited tone, he did not feel that this accident was too much of a headache. Since she liked it, he would let her have her way. "I have always been in the human world. And you are my most beautiful fireworks." He didn't say the last sentence out loud. She smiled charmingly, and under his protection, she slowly walked towards the center of the crowd. Although Xiao Su didn't bring many people with him, the noble aura emanating from the two of them, as well as the cold and unyielding aura of the guards beside them, made people involuntarily make way for them. Some people were just like that. They didn't say a word. You only needed to look at them to know the difference between them and you. The best spot to admire the lotuses could no longer be squeezed, so Chu Qingyan pulled him to the bottom of the white jade bridge. Standing on the side, they passed through the crowd and gazed at the lotuses on the pond. "Wow, this lotus has so many colors." Chu Qingyan couldn't help but exclaim. On the side closest to the pond, there were blue and purple lotus flowers, standing gracefully on the surface of the pond. "That's a blue water lily." "Then, what's that over there?" Xiao Su looked at her sparkling eyes, and couldn't help but take on the role of an explanation. Then, he pointed to the lotuses in front of them and said, "That's a yellow water lily, the white one is 100 flowers guanine lotus, and that's a needle powder, a fine brocade." She was like a studious disciple. Every time she saw a new species, she couldn't help but ask for advice. Today, Xiao Su was especially patient. Not only did he talk about the species, but he also talked about the flowering period. Seeing her worshipful eyes, he felt a greater sense of accomplishment than winning a battle. After a round, she had already recognized most of the species on the big pond. This was all thanks to this omniscient master. "Big Ice Cube, how do you know everything?" "As far as I know, there's nothing you don't know." She was about to regard him as her idol, and the admiration in her eyes was obvious. Xiao Su rubbed his nose. Actually, he didn't know everything, but these were still within the scope of his knowledge. However, seeing the little fellow's girlish demeanor, he felt that it was not in vain for him to travel around the world for the past few years. However, Xiao Su didn't have the self-awareness that he had spent so many years studying and traveling only to have it become a skill to coax his wife. Instead, he was full of pride. "What else do you want to play?" Xiao Su asked with a faint smile. Hearing this, Chu Qingyan looked around. Finally, her gaze fixed on the river bank in the distance. She immediately jumped up and said, "Big Ice Cube, let's go light the lanterns." Xiao Su followed her gaze and looked over. There were bright lanterns, and colorful flower cages floating on the water's surface. It was very eye-catching. Thus, the group changed their position and moved forward. This time, the accompanying fierce cavalry suffered. How could they know that their master was so interested in coaxing his wife today? Not only did they have to protect their two masters from being offended, they also had to be careful of their surroundings and occupy the most advantageous position. It was simply torture. Not far from the river bank, there was a small pavilion. There were eunuchs in charge of guarding it. There were various types of lanterns, as well as writing brushes, ink, paper, and inkstone for visitors to draw or inscribe on. "Big Ice Cube, I heard that if you write your wish in the lanterns, it will come true if you sincerely put it down." Chu Qingyan pulled him to the side of the pavilion and pointed at the rows of lanterns above with a smile. Xiao Su felt that this was just people placing their unfulfilled wishes in this way in order to feel at ease. However, if the little fellow wanted to play, he would accompany her to the end. The eunuch guarding the pavilion was a person with good eyesight. When he saw the two of them, he immediately greeted them and recommended the best lanterns. Chu Qingyan chose a fairy scattered flower lantern and a lion lantern for him. Then, she passed the brush and paper to him, urging him to quickly write. Xiao Su glanced at her and didn't refuse, so he took it. Seeing him being so cooperative, Chu Qingyan pursed her lips and smiled. Then, she picked up the paper and began to write seriously. Under the glass lantern, the moonlight shone on her face. It made her little face as white as snow, delicate and beautiful. Xiao Su was a little dazed at that moment. The glass beauty stood there with her beautiful eyebrows lowered. Okay, I'm done writing. What about you? Chu Qingyan did not notice that the person beside her was in a daze. She blew at the ink on the paper and then waved her hand at him. Xiao Su finally came back to his senses and casually wrote on the paper. Soon, the paper was placed in the lantern. Xiao Su helped her carry the lantern. The two of them walked to the shore where there were fewer people. Then, like a young couple, they learned to put down the lantern. Xiao Su did not have much interest in this. He casually put it down as if he had completed a task. Then, he turned around to wait for her. At this time, he saw her put her hands on her chest and whispered something. Finally, she jumped towards him. Looking at her obedient appearance, Xiao Su suddenly remembered that for so many years, he had never felt tired of her. On the contrary, every day that they spent together, for him, was a gift of life. Just like the little fellow said, liking was a pleasure at first sight. Love was a long-lasting love. Chapter 1164. Is there something on my face? Chu Qingyan walked in front of him and looked at his focused gaze. She couldn't help but look up and ask with a smile. He suddenly wanted to get closer to the little fellow and touch her. As he thought this, he slowly raised his fingers with a strong consciousness. His fingertips curled slightly as he touched her cheek. Amidst her curiosity, Xiao Su couldn't help but lower his eyebrows and curve his lips. He really wanted to keep her by his side like this. Thinking that there really was something on her face, Chu Qingyan wiped it with her hand and smiled at him. Her expression became mischievous as she asked, "Big ice cube, what wish did you write?" Xiao Su retracted his hand and put it behind his back, replying, "Nothing." He had always fought for the things he wanted himself. He would not rely on these strange forces and gods. Humph. She naturally knew that the big ice cube was already very cooperative since he was willing to lower himself to play with this little girl's things. She didn't force him to be like those scholars and young masters. Otherwise, he wouldn't be him. Seeing her reluctantly look at the river, Xiao Su couldn't help but find it funny. Then what did you write? She opened her mouth and was about to blurt out the words, but stopped at the crucial moment. She deliberately kept him in suspense. This was the fun between lovers. I'm not telling you now. I'll reveal the secret later. Xiao Su shook his head and laughed. She had always been full of energy. Jin Xian and Xining followed behind the two masters, keeping a certain distance so as not to disturb their space. At this time, Xining was holding a flower lantern in her hand. She clumsily tried to put the paper with the wish inside. Unfortunately, after a long time, she almost knocked the lantern over and still couldn't get it in. There were many little palace maids secretly laughing at her and she blushed. Jin Xian couldn't stand it anymore. He reached out and took the lantern and paper. He glanced at it. The rabbit lantern was quite similar to hers. He didn't waste any time. He stuffed the paper in and handed it to her again. Just now, when he directly touched her, she was a little stunned. Now that the lantern was back in her hand, she finally reacted. Her face was hot. He probably thought that she was stupid again. She immediately lowered her head and rushed into the crowd. Squeezing her way to the riverside, she put down the lantern and looked at Jin Xian again. She felt that she was too ashamed to face anyone. Jean Xian didn't know where she got the strength to run so far. He frowned and followed her. People were coming and going, and it was easy to get separated. At this moment, he was surrounded by a few unfamiliar young ladies from official families. He thought that he was blocking the way and wanted to retreat to the side, but he didn't expect that these people were coming for him. Lord Chu, why do you always walk with that servant girl? Why don't you come with us and enjoy the lotus flowers and lanterns? One of the braver girls took a step forward and opened her mouth to invite Xi Ning, but her tone revealed her contempt for Xi Ning. Before Jean Xian entered the court and became an official, he didn't have a surname. Later, before he left Chu Qingyan, she gave him a surname. From now on, he was a member of the Chu clan. Because he had the same surname as his master, Jean Xian's sense of belonging was even stronger, and he was even more loyal to her. Jean Xian had returned from the battlefield with meritorious service and stood out in court. He was young, promising, and talented. He had long become the ideal son-in-law that all families fought over. Furthermore, such a young man full of masculinity was not the same as the scholars and young masters in Jingdo who had been raised by literature. Many young girls in Jingdo began to pay close attention to him, which was why there were so many people trying to strike up a conversation with him. However, at this time, Jean Xian was a little impatient with these girls who were similar in age to Xi Ning but were not as tactful and cute as her. He didn't like to deal with these kinds of girls, so after nodding slightly, he left to find the person who had just run away. Then, under the angry and unwilling gazes of the girls, he stood guard by Xi Ning's side. I hope that Jean Xian can remember the past and find his family. Xi Ning didn't know what had happened after she left. At this time, her hands were clasped in front of her chest as she softly muttered. If they're lost, then they're lost. It's not like we can't find them. Just as she finished speaking and was about to turn around, she suddenly heard these words beside her. She jumped in fright, but when she saw that it was him, she sighed in relief. You scared me to death. You didn't even make a sound when you walked. That's because you were too engrossed. Jean Xian retorted in his heart. Xi Ning calmed down, then thought of something and asked, Right, what did you say just now? You don't plan to find your family? That's all in the past. So what if we find them? Maybe they're already gone. The most important thing now is the present. Jean Xian said expressionlessly. Xi Ning muttered, How heartless. Jean Xian didn't refute. In his opinion, there was nothing better than his current life. There were people he wanted to protect and people he wanted to protect. That was enough. The past was all dust and smoke. Look at those two, they look like husband and wife. Chu Qingyan pointed at Jean Xian and Xi Ning not far away, giggling. Xiao Su didn't comment. But why does Jean Xian's aura feel so familiar? Chu Qingyan raised her eyebrows and looked at her big ice block, sizing him up. As the saying goes, one is marked by the company one keeps. Jean Xian had been by Xiao Su's side for a long time, but in Chu Qingyan's opinion, he had learned most of her big ice block's unapproachable aura. Fortunately, Xi Ning was around. Otherwise, she would have to worry if Jean Xian would be single for the rest of his life. Xiao Su felt goosebumps when she stared at him like that. He couldn't help but pinch her fingers. What are you thinking about? Chu Qingyan stopped smiling, then looked at the lantern that was gradually drifting away. She suddenly said, Big ice block, I'll tell you what I wrote in the lantern, but you're not allowed to laugh at me. When she said that, he was even more curious. Okay. She said slowly, I wrote that I hope the world will be peaceful. Xiao Su was surprised and amused. This didn't seem like her style. Why did you think of writing this? He smiled, but he saw the seriousness in her eyes. He couldn't help but stop smiling. She looked at the picturesque face in front of her and said word by word seriously, because if the world is peaceful, there won't be any wars. If the world is peaceful, we won't have so many separations and bumps in the future. I want to ride the world with you and raise the whip in the martial arts world. That way, no one will disturb us and use any excuse to pull you into danger. These words made Xiao Su's heart tremble. So behind this lantern, there was such a longing hidden behind it. Perhaps it was because he had never given her a sense of security, so she had always been thinking about it. He couldn't help but reach out and pull her into his arms. His voice was solemn. You will get what you want. If the heavens aren't willing to help you achieve it, I will personally help you create the prosperous and peaceful world that you want. This scene fell into the eyes of the person in the dark, and it caused ripples in her heart. Chapter 1165. Higashio Motetsu had been hiding in a corner by himself, waiting for the show to begin. He never expected to see Xiao Su and Chu Qingyan together. He felt uncomfortable and wanted to look away, but he couldn't control his body. He could only watch as the two intimately snuggled up to each other. Perhaps it was because he was hiding in the shadows and surrounded by a boiling cauldron of voices that he was able to act without the slightest scruple. He didn't have to worry about Xiao Su's vigilance as he watched them the entire time. A blurry light fell on her body, obscuring her expression. However, from her completely dependent appearance, Higashio Motetsu felt like this was the first time he had seen her like this. She was as obedient as a small animal. She had retracted her claws and was in her most relaxed state. It was as if something that belonged to him had only been discovered today. It turned out that she had never been completely open to him. Higashio Motetsu felt a bitter taste in the corner of his mouth. What should he do? He felt a little jealous of Xiao Su. At this time, the crowd was constantly blocking his line of sight. He withdrew his gaze and turned to the other side, where he saw Xuanqi Zimo gesturing to him. Thinking that it was about time, he decided to temporarily push the chaotic emotions that had welled up in his heart to the back of his mind. At the same time, Peng Zhijing, who had been wandering around, came to the back of a rockery to rest. She had been squeezed all the way here until her legs were sore and she was leaning against a tree trunk without a care for her image. The maids accompanying her were already used to her behavior. After trying to persuade her a few times to no avail, they didn't waste any more time. Now that her true nature had been exposed, she no longer hid it and went her own way. In any case, she was far away from Southern Blue, so on the surface, she was the most powerful. While she was resting, there seemed to be a group of people on the other side of the rockery. However, unlike her rest, they seemed to be waiting for someone. They were chattering very noisily. Because she was in the shadows, no one noticed her. However, she was able to see them in the shadows. She was about to sigh. The place she had found with great difficulty was about to be ruined again. However, at this time, she heard Chu Qingyan and Xiao Su's names. Did you see that just now? The King of England was actually accompanying Chu Qingyan to admire flowers. Didn't they say that the King of England was a martial artist who wielded swords all day and didn't understand these things? One of the girls in pink spoke with a strange tone. That's nothing. However, I find it strange that the King of England has such a gentle side. The woman in blue interrupted. When I passed them just now, he didn't care for anyone else. He only had his eyes on Chu Qingyan. He was so affectionate. The yellow-clothed woman couldn't help but sigh. I thought that a great figure like King Ying would be cold and taciturn, disdaining to come down to the mortal world. Who would have thought that after meeting you today, you would be so unexpected? Shook, shaking her head. Really, for making a fuss over nothing. You think that he's a cold man who doesn't know how to be romantic, but that's because he's warm, not you. She remembered the way Xiao Su looked at Chu Qingyan and the way he looked at others. She couldn't help but shiver. Xiao Su was as cold as he could be to others, but to Chu Qingyan, it was as if he was immersed in a honey pot. His heart emitted warmth. Peng Zhijing sighed. It seemed that those people weren't ready to leave yet. She would go find a quiet place by herself. However, just as she was about to leave, the center of the conversation fell on her. To be exact, there was also Xiao Ho. She couldn't help but stop. You guys say that the Southern Sung Princess is quite beautiful, but is there a problem with her brain? There are so many good men out there, but she chose a sickly person. I heard that a few years ago, the imperial physician said that the third prince wouldn't live past 20. Now, he's relying on those medicinal herbs to keep him alive. Otherwise, he would have already. The last few words weren't said, but everyone had a tacit understanding. The woman in yellow continued the conversation. Her tone was also filled with doubt and undisguised ridicule. That's right. You didn't see everyone's reaction in the hall. They were all shocked. However, this barbaric princess knows her place and doesn't dare to harm others. Now, the position of the other prince's concubines has become a hot commodity in the capital. That's right. The southern Song people are rude and unreasonable. I saw her performance in the hall. She was simply shameless. If it was someone else choosing a son-in-law, they wouldn't be so boastful. She showed her face in public without any etiquette. You guys are the ones with holes in your brains. Xiao Ho isn't a sickly person. Pang Zhijing's heart was burning with anger. She simply couldn't listen anymore. She turned around and left. After that, she couldn't hear anything else. Even if she was open-minded, she would still feel stifled after hearing such unpleasant words. She then walked away on her own. By the time she had calmed down, the maids by her side had already been pushed away by brave Serge's men. Since she did not know the way back, she had no choice but to find a place to rest and wait for them to come looking for her. Only after the bustling noise had left did she have the mood to think about the conversation of those gossipy girls. Why was she so angry? Was it purely because she was being criticized? No, she could still laugh it off at the beginning. It was when they started talking behind Xiao Ho's back that her anger rose. She was momentarily stunned. Since when did she care so much about what others thought of him? Could it be that the scope of justice had broadened? Since when was she so kind? Just when she was shocked by her own thoughts, she heard a few footsteps coming in her direction. However, they didn't get any closer and were only a few steps away. There was a huge potted plant in the middle, completely concealing her. Where is she? The person with his back facing Pang Zhijing asked. Chu Qingyan has already arrived at the flowing water pavilion. The fourth prince's men are now at the crabapple flower bank. A sharp voice sounded. It sounded like the voice of a eunuch. Very good. Now, one of you will go and lure Chu Qingyan to the crabapple flower bank. After that, act according to the plan. Young palace master said that you only have one chance. Think about it carefully. The person with his back facing them spoke again with a hint of warning. The few of them hurriedly responded and then dispersed. After the person who gave the instructions looked around and saw that there was no one around, he quickly left. Pang Zhijing, who was standing in the shadows, seemed to have stumbled upon a huge conspiracy. While the other party was talking, she covered her mouth tightly with one hand, afraid that she would make any noise and be silenced. After the person left, she held onto a tree branch and thought in a daze. Could it be that someone wanted to frame Qingyan? No, she had to warn her. Even if she was overthinking it. Pang Zhijing made up her mind and immediately turned around. However, she was frightened by the person standing silently behind her. She stumbled back and fell to the ground. She didn't care about the pain. Her heart was in her throat. She raised her head and looked at the pair of dormant, shining eyes in the darkness. She heard that person laugh and say, "Seems like we've been discovered." The voice that sounded like a laugh yet not a laugh made her feel as if she had been doused with cold water. Her whole body trembled. Chapter 1166. Hearing his voice, Pang Zhijing felt a chill rise from the bottom of her feet. Although she couldn't see his face hidden in the darkness, just by looking at his pair of beautiful and evil eyes, she knew that he didn't come with good intentions. She struggled to stand up, but found that she couldn't exert any strength on her ankle. She cursed inwardly. She must have sprained her old injury, but it wasn't to the extent that she didn't have any strength. She must have been frightened. What should she do? You, who are you? What are you doing here? What does it have to do with you that I'm here? At this time, the most important thing was to take the initiative and not be controlled by others. No matter if he was from the group just now or someone else, she wanted to let him know that she wasn't someone to be trifled with. Thus, she raised her voice and bluffed. Higashio Motetsu glanced at Pang Zijing, who had fallen to the ground, and snorted in his heart. She was still too inexperienced to play games with him. If he hadn't come to find Zimo out of boredom, he wouldn't have known that their plan had been seen through. In order to proceed smoothly, he had the intention to kill. No matter how loud you are, you won't attract the guards. This is the palace's blind spot, and my men are all around. There was the sound of someone walking by. He estimated the distance between them. He had to get rid of her quietly. He couldn't make a move now to prevent her from exposing their tracks. After coming to this strange world for so long, she had been wandering between life and death. Being influenced by what she saw and heard, she could more or less understand the hidden meaning in his words. Pang Huang was cold and heartless to her. As long as she had any value, he would desperately squeeze it out. He didn't care if she was dead or alive. After all, she was just a royal brother and sister. He could have as many as he wanted. As for Xiao Ho, although his words were threatening her, she could tell that he did not place her little life in his eyes. It was just that they needed each other, and he would occasionally tease her so that she could stay by his side with a clear conscience. She could act like a tyrant without crossing his bottom line. However, the person in front of her, although his words and actions were slow and relaxed, he really wanted to kill her. She suddenly realized that Xiao Ho might be the only person who could use her and protect her at the same time since she came to this strange world. What do you want to do? Pang Zijing looked at the person who was slowly approaching. Her heart turned cold, but she didn't dare to make a sound to annoy him. She could only drag her body back. You know something you shouldn't know. There's no use keeping your life. Why don't you report to the King of Hell in advance and learn what you should and shouldn't hear? Princess, so you were hiding here. Father is looking for you. As for Higashio Motetsu, when the other party spoke, he weighed the possibility of exposing himself if he made a move now. In the end, he stopped and his gaze landed precisely on the other side of the wall, on the person who had pointed out the identity of the woman in front of him and himself. He was very smart. Because of that sentence, he had subconsciously weighed the consequences of going up against two people with extremely high statuses. Therefore, in that moment of hesitation, he had given the other party time to approach, and he would not be able to make a move. It turned out that there was such a smart person in the imperial family of the capital. He thought of Xiao Su, Xiao Ran, Consort Yu, and the others. He couldn't help but chuckle. The capital was too lively. Higashio Motetsu didn't stay any longer and left in a flash. By the time Xiao Ho reached where he had been standing, he had already disappeared. Xiao Ho did not expect this person's martial arts to be so high that he could actually escape when he was just a few steps away from him. Frowning, he instructed in a low voice, "Send someone to investigate this person's background." "Yes." In the darkness, someone replied and then retreated. "How long do you plan on sitting on the ground?" Xiao Ho looked down at her from above. Pang Zijing was completely unaware of what had just happened. She still hadn't recovered from what had just happened. Only when the voice above her crashed down did she raise her head in a daze. He lowered his brows and asked impatiently. However, the moonlight poured down on his body. He came against the light like a god of salvation. The light softened the sharpness in his eyes. Reflected in her eyes was only a kind and benevolent face. She seemed to have found a ray of hope that she could rely on in the boundless sea. Her eyes were sore. She had forgotten about the matter of scheming against him in the palace. She felt wronged and helpless. "I can't stand up." While waiting for her to speak, he had already noticed that something was wrong with her. Hearing her dependent tone, he was slightly stunned. He could have just left her alone, but seeing her red nose and how frightened she was, even if it was out of good etiquette, he couldn't just sit there and watch. So he went forward and reached out, one hand holding her arm and the other holding her waist. With a bit of strength, He helped her up. After she stood up, he retreated to a suitable distance. His expression was still unhappy as he looked at her. The imperial palace is not like the outside. Don't run around. This time this king was able to save you, but next time you might not be so lucky. She didn't have time to enjoy his gentleness before she was ruthlessly splashed with cold water. She pouted and then lowered her head to tidy up her clothes. Her skirt had been torn by a stone, but the mark wasn't very obvious, so she could make do with it. Xiao Ho saw that she was fine. She still had the courage to be angry after doing something wrong. His head hurt a bit. Speak, why did that person attack you? Although they were far apart, he could clearly feel the strong killing intent coming from that person. These words inadvertently reminded Pang Zhijing. She finally remembered that she still needed to find Qing Yan. She quickly asked, do you know where that flowing water pavilion is? Xiao Ho saw that she was recklessly looking left and right, and did not listen to what he said just now. He was originally angry, but at this time, he did not hide it. He reached out and grabbed her wrist, his anger uncontrollable. Pang Zhijing, you have guts. Even Xiao Ho, who was usually calm and collected, found it hard to calm down after being plotted against in front of his imperial father and the officials of the imperial court. Being able to wait for her calmly tonight was already suppressing the anger in his chest. Seeing that she wasn't cooperating, he even had the heart to strangle her to death. The sharp pain from her wrist made her soul return to her body. The matter of how his plan to choose a son-in-law in front of everyone instantly rushed into her mind. Her face turned white. Damn it, he wouldn't want to settle the score now, right? Chapter 1167. Xiao Ho, you have to calm down. Pang Zhijing twisted her wrist and struggled. Although the person in front of her looked as weak as a little white flower, once he used his strength, she couldn't move at all. She could only try to persuade him. Xiao Ho raised his eyebrows and smiled, but his voice was a little cold. Do you think that this prince is too lenient with you, so you dare to play tricks in front of this prince? No, I didn't mean that. She immediately denied it. What a joke. If she admitted it, her good days would come to an end. However, she didn't seem to have any good days left. Seeing her innocent and obedient appearance, he remembered that she had caught him off guard in the palace today. He couldn't help but use more strength in his hand. Then tell me, why did you go against our plan? After going around in circles, it still came back to this question. She thought that if she didn't face it today, she would be torn to pieces by him sooner or later. I think that this plan is very unreasonable. Xiao Su and Chu Qingyan are very loving. If I were to interfere, think about the Southern Sung Army's ending. I'm afraid that I would die very miserably. She quickly explained. You are a princess of a country. Even if your request is unreasonable, no one will find trouble with you. Moreover, do you think that this prince is just a decoration? After Xiao Ho finished speaking, he realized that she was just quibbling. His gaze turned cold. This prince wants to hear the truth. As expected of an old fox. She secretly complained in her heart, but she didn't dare to play tricks. I think that I'm living very well and don't like to be a third party. Moreover, I don't want to cooperate with your plan at all. It feels like I'm helping the evildoer. Have a good heart. I'm just an insignificant outsider, so let me go. I promise that I won't cause any trouble for you. These words made Xiao Ho's lungs explode. He never thought that the carefully arranged chess piece would give him such a big blow at this time. Now that the situation has been set, and our marriage has been set, do you still think that you're an insignificant person? Once you're involved, unless you die, you won't be able to escape even if you have wings. These words were so severe that she ignored the pain in her wrist. But for some reason, the words marriage made her heart tremble slightly. There was an indescribable feeling of joy in her heart, which made her feel at a loss. After all that had happened, Xiao Ho didn't dare to be careless around her. His eyes were glued to her face, and when he saw that her expression was flickering, he couldn't help but narrow his eyes and move closer to her. Pang Zhijing, your goal is to marry this prince? There was no path behind her to begin with, and as she was pulled backwards by him, her entire body collided with the potted plant. The dense branches pierced through her thin summer shirt, and it hurt a little, but she did not dare to move. His words were like xia lays, exploding in her ears, her mind and her heart. I. She opened her mouth, but didn't know what to say. She had always been conflicted about which prince to choose. Although the choice was not in her hands, she had placed her last bet on the palace banquet. Xiao Su was the first to be excluded. She had heard that Xiao Ya was too lecherous and was always obsessed with women. Xiao Ran was also the center of the power vortex. She couldn't afford to offend him. She could only choose someone she was familiar with and had confidence in, and that could only be Xiao Ho. However, she had forgotten that this person was actually a wolf in sheep's clothing. For example, right now his slightly red eyes were filled with anger. Xiao Ho did not give her a chance to continue. He seemed to have suddenly put away his sharpness, and transformed into a gentle lover. He held her wrist with one hand, and her chin with the other. He leaned closer, and his eyes turned affectionate. "Do you like this prince?" "Huh?" Her eyes widened in an instant. She didn't know if it was because she couldn't believe his question, or because she found it hard to believe the answer in her heart. She froze there like a stone. "Let go, I'm in pain." Xiao Ho's fingers used a bit of force, causing her chin to hurt. She couldn't say a single word she wanted to say. He was like a rose, mysterious and charming, but also coquettish and thorny. This king was still thinking about why you appeared in the king's palace last night. The knockout drug was just an excuse. Your true goal should be this king. Her face turned red. How could this person be so shameless? Was it fun to ridicule her? No, he was taking revenge on her. But his aura surrounded her body, making her unable to move forward or retreat. She just stood there like a block of wood. Seeing her awkward appearance, Xiao Ho did not stop there. It was like he was certain that she was thinking like this. The charm on his body faded and his gentleness returned. He let go of her chin, but his grip on her wrist was still there. "Princess, although this king was careless this time, don't think that this king will spend any effort on you. In this king's eyes, you are no different from a wild flower on the side of the road." He was like an aloof god-emperor. His eyes were filled with pity, but he disdained to show any kindness. Pang Zhijing looked at him in a daze. She forgot about the pain in her wrist because these words seemed to make her heart hurt even more. Xiao Ho flung her hand away. She couldn't control her body and fell backwards, just in time to be caught by the right maid. Xiao Ho ordered, "Keep an eye on the princess. Until the banquet ends, don't let her leave the main hall." Those maids did not know how this great aunt had offended this master, so they immediately lowered their heads in response. Pang Zhijing had her head down as she watched his clothes drift away from her line of sight. Her eyes numbly fell onto the bruises on her wrist and her lips suddenly curled as a self-deprecating smile appeared. Just now, when he asked her if she liked him, her heart actually did not deny it. It turned out that during these days, she had developed different feelings for him. Only she felt that she was very pitiful. As soon as she confirmed that she liked someone, she was judged to have fallen out of love. Was there anyone in this world who was more pitiful than her? "Princess, we should return to the palace." The maid did not know what she was thinking as she carried out Xiao Ho's instructions. Pang Zhijing raised her head with a somewhat desolate expression. She was already too busy to take care of herself and could not report to Qing Yan. However, with Xiao Su by her side, even if there was danger, she should be able to resolve it. She wanted to raise her hand, but found that her wrist could not exert any strength. She grumbled in her heart, so heavy-handed. After Pang Zhijing's group walked away, there was a small commotion on Chu Qingyan's side. After Chu Qingyan and Xiao Su finished strolling around the lanterns, they prepared to return home. At this time, a palace maid appeared in front of them. "Young Miss Chu, young Miss Tang and young Miss Jean are waiting for you in front. They said that they saw several beautiful lanterns and wanted you to go take a look." The other party pointed out the names of the people and even explained the reason. Chu Qingyan did not think much of it and said to the person beside her, "Wait for me here, I'll be back soon." Xiao Su saw that there were only women there and it was not convenient for him to appear. He nodded and told her to be careful before retreating to the side to wait for her. She smiled at him and brought Xi Ning with her to follow the little palace maid. Chapter 1168. Following the palace maid for a while, she entered the crowd and then slowly left the lively riverside. Chu Qingyan felt that something was wrong. She turned around to call out Xining, but found that she had been pushed to an unknown place by the crowd. "Where's Miss Tang and Miss Jean?" Chu Qingyan's heart was filled with suspicion. She turned around to ask that palace maid, but in the blink of an eye, she had disappeared. This made her heart feel even more apprehensive. Could it be that someone was playing a prank on her? She stood there for a while and did not see anyone familiar. She made a prompt decision and wanted to go back the way she came. But at this time, a small sound came from behind her. She stopped in her tracks and exerted strength in her wrist. She turned around to attack the person. But she hit empty air and her arm was caught by the person. Her brows knit together and she wanted to turn around to attack again, but a familiar laughter sounded in her ears. "Although we haven't seen each other in a long time, isn't this greeting gift a bit too big?" The lazy and evil voice made her stop her movements. She turned around to face him with a surprised expression. "Why are you here?" If it wasn't for him speaking, she wouldn't have been able to recognize him in such a dark place with his eunuch appearance. "I came to see a good show for free." He let go of her hand and continued to smile in an annoying manner. She did not believe his words at all. Using all sorts of methods to enter the palace to dress up like this, she would believe that the sun would rise from the west if there was no motive. "Then you wouldn't have led me here, right?" She narrowed her eyes as she looked at him. Higashio Motetsu shrugged his shoulders. He was about to say something when his ears moved. He raised his index finger to his lips and then pulled her hand to jump onto the roof beside them. Chu Qingyan did not have time to react and could only be led by him. When the two of them squatted down on the roof tiles, she finally said in a low and angry voice, "What do you want to do? Be careful of being mistaken as an assassin." Higashio Motetsu looked around. When he heard her words, he couldn't help laughing. "Being mistaken as an assassin is also good. I'll drag you down with me. I'm being serious with you. Don't be so out of tune all the time." Chu Qingyan pushed him angrily. He looked back at her, the devilish charm in his almond-shaped eyes suddenly dissipating. He looked at her with a chuckle and then motioned for her not to make a sound. "Just watch first. I guarantee that it will exceed your expectations." Knowing that it was pointless to continue asking, Chu Qingyan tactfully shut her mouth. However, when the two of them were so close to each other, she suddenly felt a little awkward. This was because she remembered how the two of them had parted on bad terms in the Hugua temple. Now that they met again, they could be so calm as if nothing had happened. She could not help but feel surprised. Perhaps this is what friends are like. There was no overnight enmity between husband and wife, and there was no overnight enmity between friends. However, what happened next left her with no time to consider their situation. A figure stealthily appeared where she had been standing. Chu Qingyan could not help turning her head to look at the person beside her. Higashio Motetsu saw her gaze and raised an eyebrow, indicating for her to look below. Chu Qingyan frowned. She could only carefully observe the person below. Looking at the figure, it was a woman and the clothes she was wearing were exquisite. It was not something a normal person could afford, so she concluded that it was a harem girl or a young miss from a government official's family. However, at this time, the lights flashed and she saw the person's face. She leaned forward in surprise. It was actually Jing Mingzhu. What was she doing here? Strange, strange. Didn't they say that the fourth prince was here? Why did he disappear the moment I came? Jing Mingzhu looked left and right, feeling a little anxious. Previously, she had followed Xiao Ran out of the palace and followed him to the riverside. In the blink of an eye, she had lost sight of him. She originally wanted to give up looking for him, but she did not expect that all the servants by her side had gone missing. Her heart was filled with anger, so she walked back to where she came from. However, at this time, a eunuch came over and said that the fourth prince was waiting for her and asked her to come over. Her heart was filled with joy. It seemed that the fourth prince had noticed her and had rushed over without thinking. However, after being blown by the wind for a while, she became a little more clear-headed. If a woman was found to have a private meeting with a man outside, she would be disgraced and cursed by others. She would become a dissolute woman in the eyes of the world. She had been hot-headed and agreed. While she was hesitating, Jing Mingzhu had already decided to leave. Chu Qingyan looked at the person beside her with a face full of doubt. Higashio Motetsu smiled without saying anything and pointed in a direction. She looked in the direction he was pointing and was stunned. Wasn't that Xiao Ran? What was he doing standing in the corner? Because she was in a high position, she could see Jing Mingzhu and Xiao Ran, but they could not see each other. What kind of situation was this? If it wasn't for the fact that there were people around, she really wanted to grab Higashio Motetsu's clothes and ask him for an explanation. Higashio Motetsu looked at her bright eyes staring at him and thought of how she had nestled in Xiao Su's arms like a little bird. He felt that this kind of person was more pleasing to the eye. He opened his mouth and silently said, "Don't make a sound. A good show is about to begin." Chu Qingyan did not understand what he meant. At this time, a scream suddenly sounded out, followed by a splash sound. She looked over in surprise and saw that there was an additional figure on the surface of the river crying for help, "Save me, save me." She wanted to get up to save him, but Higashio Motetsu immediately held her down and shook his head, telling her not to make a sound. At this time, not far away, a few voices suddenly sounded out, "Oh no, Miss Chu fell into the water, Miss Chu fell into the water." The voices were not coming from this direction. Instead, they were running further and further away, with no intention of coming over to save him. Chu Qingyan was stunned. What the hell? The one who fell into the water was not her. And these people looked like they were going to announce it to the world. Was falling into the water causing such a commotion? At this time, the person in the other corner moved. Xiao Ran stepped on the wall and flew out like a bird spreading its wings. He looked so hurried that he did not see Chu Qingyan and Xiao Ran at all. He landed on the shore and saw the person struggling in the water. Without saying a word, he jumped down and paddled towards the person who had fallen into the water. All these unforeseen events happened in the blink of an eye. It was so fast that people thought they were seeing things. She watched as Xiao Ran quickly swam towards Jing Mingzhu. Knowing that Jing Mingzhu would be fine, she finally had the mood to figure out the situation. Her gaze fell on the flat shore that did not even have a single rock. She instantly narrowed her eyes and turned to look at Higashio Motetsu, who was watching the show. She was plotted against. Hearing her doubts, Higashio Motetsu patted his body and stood up. He reached out and brought her down from the roof, but he changed the direction of their landing. No matter what you think of this young master in your heart, if it wasn't her who fell into the water today, it would have been you. Alright, this young master should leave now. Otherwise, I'll really be treated as an assassin. Higashio Motetsu smiled indifferently and then quickly left. Chu Qingyan watched him disappear in a few leaps and suddenly had a bold guess in her heart. She had been called over, followed by Jing Mingzhu. Jing Mingzhu had fallen into the water, but the people hiding at the side had shouted that she had fallen into the water and ran far away. At this time, Xiao Ran had run out to save her. It seemed that in ancient times, getting wet seemed to mean losing one's virginity. After falling into the water and being saved by someone, she had lost her virginity. She was so frightened that she did not notice the earth-shattering scene outside the wall. Chapter 1169. She leaned against the corner of the wall, panting. Suddenly, she heard a soft sound. She immediately became alert and whispered, "Who is it?" "It's me." The mellow voice calmed her heart. She turned to look at the person slowly walking out of the darkness. She couldn't help but lean towards him. Xiao Su took her shoulders and gently stroked her into his arms. "Don't worry. I'm here." Only then did she relax and lean against him. "I don't know what happened either. Is it related to me? It seems so for now." Xiao Su felt that she was in low spirits. He couldn't help but tighten his grip on her shoulders. "We have to leave here first." She remembered the shouts about her falling into the water. She knew that the big ice cube had his reasons for saying that. She nodded and followed him through the secluded path to the palace. The chaos outside had nothing to do with them. Halfway there, Xiao Su suddenly stopped. He frowned in her confusion. "You have to show up at this time." With his reminder, she immediately understood and moved away from his side. The paleness on her face slowly faded away and she regained her vitality. "Then let's go." Xiao Su was relieved to see that she recovered so quickly. He knew that the little fellow never dropped the ball on important matters. It was obvious that someone was targeting her today. It would be best if she could bear with it. If she couldn't, he was still there. Thus, the two of them blended into the crowd that was rushing towards the direction of the fall. "What? I heard that Miss Chu fell into the water." The crowd was like countless small streams that converged into a large river, and then rushed to the riverside. Their voices rose and fell, and some were gloating, some were shocked, some were secretly happy, and some were indifferent. Everything that could be expected was there. Soon, they arrived at the place. At this time, Xiaoran had just rescued her. Before he could check on her, the palace servants separated them. He remembered that the person in his arms was still breathing when he got out of the water. He heaved a sigh of relief. Empress Liang, Imperial Concubine Moon, and the others just happened to be nearby. As soon as they heard the call for help, they brought people over. Because of their gender, they were the ones who had given the order to separate Xiaoran and the other person. What the hell is going on? How do you take care of people? As soon as Imperial Concubine Moon came up, she began to criticize the palace servants present. Although she was the one who had arranged this play, she was more shocked and angry than anyone else. Sometimes, it wasn't too much to say that she was a master of acting. Empress Liang couldn't stand Consort Yu's attitude and raised her hand to calm her down. "Don't worry, Sister Consort Yu. Let's see if the fourth prince and this young lady are all right. After all, the one who fell into the water is a young lady." Empress Liang repeatedly emphasized that the other party was a young lady, but in reality, she was mocking and gloating. Although it was a good thing that Xiaoran saved someone, if the other party was an unmarried young lady, it would not be a big deal to betroth her to him. However, if the other party was a woman of the imperial court, it would not be easy to clean up the mess. She might even be forced to commit suicide to protect her reputation. Consort Yu could hear the sarcasm in Consort Yu's words, but she wanted to see Consort Yu shoot herself in the foot. The one who was protected by the palace servants was her future daughter-in-law. If Consort Yu knew that it was Ranner who saved her, she would be so angry that she would vomit blood. That's right. Let the imperial physician take a look. Although it's summer, it's not good for a young lady to come into contact with water. Consort Yu agreed with a fake smile. Empress Liang felt that Consort Yu's words were strange. At this time, the woman who fell into the water was surrounded and coughing. She couldn't help but frown and ask, "Which family's young lady fell into the water?" "Just now, I heard that it was. The people present didn't dare to say because of Empress Liang's status, but the other palace servants stammered, their expressions flickering. Empress Liang's heart skipped a beat. She asked sternly, "Who?" "Young Lady Chu." A woman next to her whispered. Although her voice was soft, in such a quiet place, it spread quickly. Empress Liang's vision darkened. How could it be her? Everyone present looked at each other. Their future sister-in-law was saved by her younger brother-in-law. Although it was out of good intentions, wasn't it unintentionally making their eldest brother a cuckold? However, before Imperial Concubine Moon could open her mouth, a clear and melodious voice sounded out from the crowd. "Are you calling for me?" It was a familiar voice with a unique quality. Everyone couldn't help but look in the direction of the voice. They saw Chu Qingyan, dressed in a scarlet dress, standing out like a crane in a flock of chickens. She was bright and dazzling. At this time, she was looking at everyone with a smile. Then, accompanied by Xiao Su, she walked towards Empress Liang and Consort Yu. Qingyan pays respects to Her Imperial Highness the Empress and Consort Yu. She gracefully bowed towards them. Xiao Su also nodded indifferently towards them. Seeing her standing there perfectly fine, Empress Liang's heart settled down. She wouldn't allow anyone to embarrass her. However, Consort Yu, whose face instantly paled, looked at Chu Qingyan as if she had seen a ghost. "Why are you here?" Chu Qingyan replied with a smile. "Just now, Qingyan was looking at the lanterns in front and heard someone fall into the water, so I came to take a look." Xiao Ran was wiping the water off his body. When he heard Chu Qingyan's voice, his eyes instantly widened. "Qingyan, no, it's not, then who was the person that was saved?" Imperial Concubine Moon saw that her son was in a frozen state and immediately turned to look at the person who was surrounded. At this time, the palace servants scattered and the person wrapped in a layer of clothing revealed her face. "Jing Mingzhu. Why is it you?" Xiao Ran's eyes widened as he looked at her in disbelief. However, when he turned to look at Chu Qingyan, he didn't know what to say. He thought that the person that had fallen into the water was her, but the person that had been saved was someone else. He turned to look at his mother, his expression filled with absurd doubt. Consort Yu didn't know how to explain herself at this time. How could she have known that the person who had fallen into the water had been replaced? At this time, she could only endure her son's distrust. "All right, everyone, don't just stand here. Take the fourth prince and Miss Jing away and let the imperial physician take a good look at them to see if they have any injuries." Empress Liang really wanted to admire Consort Yu's loss of composure, but as the master of the harem, she had to know when to stop. When Xiao Ran passed in front of Chu Qingyan, he was dazed as if he had been hit by a stick. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. "Quickly go change your clothes so you don't catch a cold." Seeing him stare at the little fellow, Xiao Su gave a low cough to remind him. The palace servant next to him also agreed. Only then did Xiao Ran leave like a ghost. After the two people involved left, Empress Liang set the carriage to leave. Consort Yu fiercely glared at Chu Qingyan and Xiao Su a few times before angrily leaving with her people. Although Empress Liang didn't pursue this matter and it was likely that the matter would be left unsettled, everyone present still smelled something fishy and began to whisper to each other. In any case, the matter of Jing Mingzhu marrying into the imperial family was set. Some people sighed that she had a good life, and some people envied her for flying high. In short, there was no end to the topic of conversation. Chu Qingyan watched the large crowd leave and suddenly felt that this palace was very scary. It was so scary that it was like a black hole that could eat people's bones. It made people feel cold all over. At this time, her palm felt warm. She lowered her head and her fingers were wrapped in his large hand. The cold in her body gradually dissipated. "Big ice cube, let's go home. This place is too cold. If we're not careful, we'll fall into a trap. We should stay far away." "Okay." Chapter 1170. News of what happened by the pond quickly spread. After the marriage between the two countries, there was another major incident. Although the Sichuan emperor didn't say anything, everyone could feel the emperor's displeasure. For something like this to happen at the palace banquet, it was simply shameful. The one who saved the princess was actually a prince, and those palace servants were all useless. Fortunately, the palace banquet was coming to an end, and the Sichuan emperor left after exchanging some pleasantries. Due to his health, Xiao Ho slowly walked at the back of the crowd, and the southern blue envoy deliberately fell behind. When no one was paying attention, Tori said apologetically, "Lord, we didn't think it through properly this time." We will report everything that happened today to His Highness the Crown Prince. We will do our best to compensate him. The result was already done, so there was no point in saying more. Xiaohou still needed these people, so he smiled and said, "Okay, this prince will wait for His Highness the Crown Prince's reply." Torai knew that he was in the wrong, so he smiled embarrassedly. Pang Zhijing, who was lagging behind, didn't want to participate in their hypocritical exchange. She walked slowly by herself, but as she walked, her path was blocked by someone. She raised her head, and it was still him. "What do you want?" With the previous lesson, she subconsciously looked at him defensively. Xiaohou looked at her indifferently, and didn't put her reaction in his eyes. "The thing you eavesdropped before was about Chu Qingyan?" So he was concerned about the drowning incident. She nodded, and her voice was filled with joy. "That's right, but I didn't expect that the one who fell in the end wasn't Qingyan." "That's great. Otherwise, if I didn't warn her, I would feel guilty for the rest of my life." Xiaohou didn't pay attention to her nagging, and laughed lightly. "They're really lucky. Their two schemes were resolved by others. I don't know if they're lucky or something else." She originally planned to make Xiao Su lose the qualifications to compete for the throne, and become the target of her father's fear. However, it was ruined by Pang Zhijing at the crucial moment. The remaining good show ended with Jing Mingzhu falling into the water, and Chu Qingyan escaping. "Sometimes, I really envy their luck." Hearing this, Pang Zhijing whispered, "This is called good will be rewarded with good, and evil will be repaid with evil. Because what you have done in the past, one day in the future, will be returned to you in a form that you do not know. Whether it is a blessing or a curse, it is all karma." Princess is so wise. It's a pity that this king doesn't know if what awaits you in the future will be fortune or disaster, so please take care of yourself and don't bring disaster to others. After Xiaohou said this, he did not stay any longer, only coldly turning around. Pang Zhijing looked at his back as he left and stomped her feet. What a heartless and cunning fellow. The night was long. Chu Qingyan quietly leaned against the wall of the car. She looked through the window at the lonely night. Before the palace banquet ended, Xiao Su left with her in advance. They were not the main characters of today's banquet. Although they were almost pulled onto the stage in the end, they were all safe and sound. So Sichuan Emperor did not object to them leaving early. They left the bustle of the imperial palace behind them. The carriage drove further and further away. Because they left early, the road was very quiet except for a few people returning home at night. "Big Ice Cube, what do you think will happen in the end?" She looked up to ask him. Ever since she got on the carriage, she had been exceptionally quiet. He knew that she was probably frightened by this incident, so he did not say anything. He wanted to wait for her to figure it out herself. Although it is a good thing that fourth brother saved someone, this marriage cannot be avoided. Xiao Su calmly replied. Chu Qingyan gave a bitter laugh. If Jing Mingzhu did not fall into the water, then the last person to be saved would have been me. Thinking about it now, it is really scary. Don't think so much. You are not Jing Mingzhu. You will not be plotted against so easily. He was very confident about this. She hugged her knees and leaned against his shoulder. Her face had a rare look of sadness. Big Ice Cube, do you know? Actually, I'm not afraid of water. Even if I fall into the water, I can still save myself. What I'm afraid of is those invisible conspiracies. I don't think I've done anything wrong to anyone. Why would they try so hard to plot against me? It is hard to guard against a plot. I can't guarantee that I will fall into a trap when I am not paying attention. Moreover, it involved Dong Ting and Xiao Ran. She did not know what role they played in it, but it still made her heart cold. And this time, because of me, an innocent girl was implicated. No matter how I say it, my heart does not feel good. I did not kill Bo Ren, but Bo Ren died because of me. Xiao Su could feel her deep sadness. He could not help but reach out to hold her shoulders and said in a low voice, "You did not do anything wrong. Don't blame yourself and don't be afraid. Even if the person who fell into the water today was you, I would never give you away. You are the one I have chosen, and you will be for life. What she was most afraid of this time was the intention of the person behind this. If this person wanted to ruin their marriage, then after this first time, there would be a second time. However, with Big Ice Cube's promise, the coldness in her heart gradually faded. She was not afraid of people's opinions and obstructions. She just did not want to face these meaningless disturbances in their short life together. The disappearing light in her eyes suddenly gathered. She reached out to hold Big Ice Cube's hand, and her expression became firm and bright. Big Ice Cube, I will never give you away. You have to be prepared to face me alone for the rest of your life, because I will protect you in all aspects. I will not let other women get close to you, and I will not let others succeed. What was the use of being depressed? She had to bring out the drive she had in the past and protect her own love by herself. Me too. Xiao Su held her hand back, responding with a domineering air. She instantly smiled brightly. Being afraid of wolves in front and tigers behind was not her personality. During this period of time in the capital, her original sharp claws had almost been ground flat. This would not do. She had to pick up her weapons again. If an evil person came, she would beat one. If two came, she would beat two. The sound of horse hooves slowly approached the prince's residence, drowned in the night. However, Higashio Motetsu had just walked into the room when he was met with a palm strike. He was hit before he could react. His chi and blood surged, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. He staggered to his feet and raised a hand to wipe the blood from the corner of his mouth. He smiled softly, then raised his head to look at the furious person in front of him. "Milady, are you really angry tonight?" Dongting Fan slammed the table, and his eyes widened. "You still have the face to say that? Why did today's plan go wrong? Do you know how much trouble you've caused Xiaoran?" Higashio Motetsu's cynical expression did not change. Plans always go wrong. I don't know why the one who fell into the water was someone else. I think you did it on purpose. Today's palm strike is a lesson for you. If something like this happens again in the future, I won't let you off easily. After venting his anger, Dongting Fan flung his sleeves and left. He did not care at all about the injuries he had suffered. He pursed the blood on his lips and suddenly laughed softly. "Little girl, I said before that I won't hurt you. So in the future, I won't let you get hurt in the slightest." Young milady, Xuanqi Zimo had just entered the room when he saw his master slowly falling to the side. He immediately cried out in alarm and rushed over. Chapter 1171. On the second day of the palace banquet, as expected, the marriage alliance between the two empires was finalized. The imperial edict for the marriage was sent out from the palace, one to Prince Yi's mansion and the other to the courier station. On the afternoon of the day the imperial edict for the marriage alliance was issued, another imperial edict was sent out directly to the Minister of Right's mansion. It announced the marriage between the fourth prince, Xiaoran, and Jing Mingzhu. In an instant, the whole circle boiled over. Originally, with the status of the Minister of Rights in the imperial court, Jing Mingzhu was more than qualified to be conferred the title of Princess Consort according to the normal procedure. However, the emperor's heart was unpredictable. This time, the Sichuan emperor felt that he was being forced to do something beyond his ability. He was unhappy and felt that someone else had influenced his decision. Therefore, he waved his pen and gave Jing Mingzhu the position of consort. Although Jing Jin felt bitter in his heart, he could only swallow it. Who asked his daughter to be so useless and fall into the water for no reason? Fortunately, the person who saved her was the fourth prince. Otherwise, they would have no place to cry. Either there was no marriage in the imperial court, or there were two. The marriages of the two princes were settled. Suddenly, some families were happy and some were sad because there were not many positions left to compete for. The outside was bustling with noise and excitement, but the King of England's mansion was quiet and peaceful as usual. In the courtyard under the shade of the trees, Chu Qingyan and Xiao Su sat opposite each other. In front of them was a tea set. On the stone table beside them were fresh iced melons and fruits, fragrant pastries, a round bowl of mung bean soup, and a game of Go in the middle of the table. The cool breeze blew and everything was unrestrained and comfortable. Under the tree, the handsome man and the beautiful woman were pleasing to the eye. Chu Qingyan forked a bayberry and put it into her mouth. She ate while watching the person in front of her brew tea. Her teeth were cold and sweet. She sighed with satisfaction. This summer is suitable to avoid the heat at home. You don't have to do anything. Just eat, drink, and enjoy yourself. As she spoke, she forked another piece of fruit and held it in front of him. Xiao Su bit into it with her fork. The unique fragrance of the fruit surged in his mouth, and he felt the same way as she did. He reached out and placed the brewed tea in front of her. That makes sense. She chuckled as if she had been encouraged. She threw the fork back to the plate, shifted her position, and opened the chess box. Come, come, come. Play chess with me. Xiao Su looked at her excited appearance and didn't want to discourage her. Every time he played chess with her, she often acted shamelessly. She was not as steady as she was outside, but he liked it. When one had nothing to do, teasing one's wife was also a great joy in one's life. She took the first step and walked seriously. Every step she took was carefully thought out. Compared to her entanglement with every step she took, Xiao Su was much more casual. He casually put his hand aside and carefully admired the subtle changes on her face. Every time she was scratching her head, he would choose an insignificant place to place a piece, go easy on the water, and then enjoy her joy. The game went round and round, and it took a long time to play. Hey, how can you play here? She was still struggling like a trapped beast. Xiao Su chuckled. Then how do you think I should play? How would I know how you should play? She was going to act shamelessly to the end. Anyway, there were no outsiders here, and it was such a long day. If she didn't find something to bicker with, it would be too dull. This little guy was too bored. In the end, it still ended with her defeat. Kai, don't regret your moves. Why do you always bully the upside-down onion? A voice came out of nowhere, and Chu Qingyan's face turned slightly red. She turned her head and complained, Dad, how can you side with an outsider like this? Mr. Chu walked over with a pear in his mouth. When he heard his daughter's complaint, he said very seriously and sincerely, Son-in-law is one of us. Dad is siding with the other. Chu Qingyan felt like a mouthful of blood was stuck in her chest. Even if he wanted to trick his daughter, he shouldn't do it like this. Son-in-law, where's Blockhead? Mr. Chu didn't notice his daughter's hurt expression at all. His eyes were shining as he looked at his upside-down onion. Xiao Su handed a cup of tea to his future father-in-law and replied, in the wooden garden. Mr. Chu took the teacup and gulped it down, then casually wiped his mouth. So that's where that little brat ran off to. I'll go look for him right now. You're looking for him for something urgent? Xiao Su thought that it would be easier to get someone to call the wood spirit over. It's urgent, urgent. Mr. Chu harumphed. He promised to make me a fish hook, but it's not done yet. He didn't keep his word. Xiao Su pursed his lips. Then he'd better go look for the wood spirit himself. When the hook is done, I'll take you guys fishing. Mr. Chu chuckled. Before they could react, he ran off. Looking at the back of his figure leaving in a hurry, Chu Qingyan facepalmed. Dad was really like a child. At this moment, Xiao Su spoke up. Ethereal and Yen Luo will be back soon. Your father's illness can continue to be treated then. Chu Qingyan was pleasantly surprised to hear news of the two of them. I thought it would take them a while to come back. That's great. I wonder if Ethereal's injuries have fully healed. The most important thing is whether they've reconciled or not. When she thought of this, she couldn't wait for them to appear in front of her and answer her questions one by one. Perhaps we'll be able to attend their wedding. Xiao Su looked at his exceptionally excited little fellow with a gentle smile. They're progressing so quickly. A friend in need is indeed a friend indeed. Chu Qingyan bit down on a piece of ice with a crunch. It was so cool that it penetrated her heart and seeped into her pores. Xiao Su nodded. Ethereal is too responsible. I'm afraid he'll let Yen Luo down. But it's also because of this that I feel guilty towards them. If they really get married and Ethereal doesn't have anyone in the family, you'll have to work hard to prepare for it. Chu Qingyan glared at him fiercely. Of course. Whether it's Ethereal, Mu Ling, or Jean Ling, as long as I can help, I won't refuse. They've been by your side for so many years. They're your subordinates and also your family. I've long treated them as my family, so you don't have to be so courteous. Xiao Su couldn't help but smile when he heard her matter-of-fact tone. That's right. It's what you should do as the matriarch of the household. You're so annoying. She blushed at his words. When Chu Qingyan picked up the chess pieces on the chessboard, she suddenly thought of something. She looked up and asked, by the way, there was a rumor that I fell into the water that day. How did you know it wasn't me? How were you able to pinpoint my location? After all, Xiao Ran, who was the closest to her, had already jumped into the water. How could Big Ice, who knew where she was, be able to pinpoint her location in such a short time? Xiao Su replied matter-of-factly, intuition. It came from a beast's strongest intuition. Chu Qingyan was embarrassed by his answer. You're really confident. What if your intuition is wrong? He looked up at her seriously. No, I only need one look to know if the person in the water was you. He wasn't Xiao Ran, so he wouldn't mistake the person he loved for someone else. Why did she see such deep affection in his eyes? Big Ice wouldn't show such a strange expression. She must be seeing things. She immediately used her hands as a fan and flapped them desperately. Chapter 1172. The two of them played chess and ate fruits leisurely. Speaking of which, we need to prepare a lot of gifts this time. Chu Qingyan suddenly remembered, rubbing her chin as she began to think. Xiao Su raised his eyebrows and asked. Did you forget that Xiao Ho and Zijing are about to be married? Xiao Ran and Miss Jing are also about to be engaged. She rolled her eyes at him. Other than attending court, he didn't care about the ways of the world at all. If she hadn't been taking care of it, the matter of sending this favor would have been delayed. He was already cold enough in the outside world. If he didn't even maintain this favor on the surface, no one would dare to talk to him on the streets in the future. Hearing her words, he could guess what she was thinking. Xiao Su naturally knew about these kinds of relationships, but his status was high enough that others would only fawn on him. Moreover, he didn't like to socialize, and he preferred to be alone. But if the little fellow valued these things, he would let her do as she pleased. Chu Qingyan continued, Zijing has a good relationship with us, and Xiao Ran is your younger brother. So these two gifts must be carefully prepared. Later, I'll have the housekeeper open the storeroom and see if there's anything good. Xiao Su didn't comment, but, however, as the eldest brother, it's a bit unreasonable for me to get married later than them. Xiao Su rubbed his chin. Should he mention to Imperial Father at the morning court tomorrow that he and the little fellow's marriage be arranged together? The chess piece between her two fingers almost slipped because of his words. She picked it up again, her expression uncertain as she said coquettishly, I'm talking to you about serious matters. What are you talking about? I'm also talking about serious matters, and it's more important than what you're doing now. Xiao Su replied seriously. Chu Qingyan's face burned even hotter. She muttered, you're really not serious. Xian Mo's eyes flashed with a hint of a smile. Knowing that she was shy, Xiao Su called Huo Ling over. Master, are you looking for this subordinate? Huo Ling stood up straight. When is the marriage between the third prince and the southern blue princess? Xiao Su asked. August 25th, fourth prince's engagement date. August 26th, Chu Qingyan listened from the side and was slightly surprised. So fast. Doesn't that mean it's only a month? Hualing nodded and explained, when the Southern Blue envoy left, the dowry had already been transported over. The Ministry of Rites has also prepared the wedding. As long as the marriage partner is confirmed, the wedding can be held at any time. The reason why we set aside a month's time is to send the news back to the Southern Blue continent and invite them to attend the wedding. While Chu Qingyan and Hualing were talking, Xiao Su's thoughts fell onto another matter, and that was no matter how he brought forward his marriage with the little fellow, it seemed to be unable to catch up with them, and he couldn't help but feel slightly depressed in his heart. So it's like that. No wonder I said it would be like holding a wedding in a short month. That's too fast. She muttered to herself. Xiao Su muttered in his heart. If he ignored those red tape, he would be able to marry the little fellow in 3 days. Because the weather was too hot, other than the servants in the courtyard, everyone else had gone into hiding. A red figure circled around the long corridor and appeared outside the kitchen. Huang Yi was ordering people to get water at this time. When she saw the person who came, she couldn't help but smile. Hang Yi Jijie, it's so hot today. Why aren't you resting in your room? What are you doing here? Hang Yi shook the jar in her hand in front of her. I heard that the little princess has recently fallen in love with iced fruits. I just happened to go to the ice cellar and the person in charge said that the kitchen should add more ice, so he asked me to bring it over. You really are too considerate. I was just about to send someone to get it. Huang Yi took the jar and gave it to the servant girl behind her. She smiled as she gave her thanks. At this time, Xining happened to come to the kitchen to get something. When she came out, she couldn't help but nod with a smile before leaving. Hang Yi saw the servant girls following behind Xining and jealousy flashed through her eyes. In the past, in the inner courtyard, only the head servant girls had the right to be surrounded by attendants. But now, the tables had turned. She had been stripped of her power and became a dispensable passerby in the inner courtyard. Thinking about it, she really couldn't accept it. Seeing Hang Yi keep looking at Xining, Huang Yi said with a faint smile, "Don't you feel that this little girl is very obedient?" Hang Yi said with a fake smile, "She is very obedient." Huang Yi didn't understand the meaning of her smile. Coincidentally, a servant called her and she turned to respond. Hang Yi saw that she was so busy that she couldn't leave, so she wandered outside. At this time, a servant girl came out with a basket full of red dates. She thought for a moment and then pinched the things in her sleeve. She then pretended to casually walk over. Even though Hang Yi wasn't in charge of the inner courtyard, her authority was still there. Adding on her status as a head servant girl, the servant girl who was looking for a place to dry things stopped and bowed when she saw her come over. Hang Yi Jijie. Hang Yi smiled cordially. What are you planning to do? It's like this. Didn't it rain 2 days ago? The red dates weren't covered tightly and were slightly damp. Auntie had me take them out to dry. She said that she was going to prepare red dates and white fungus soup for Wang Fei in the next 2 days. The servant girl replied truthfully. Hang Yi nodded slightly. Before and after Wang Fei's menstruation, the kitchen would always prepare this soup for her. Calculating, it was almost time. She walked forward and flipped through the little basket to inspect the red dates. Then you can't be careless. Look carefully later to see if there are any moths. Remember to pick them out. If it wasn't for Hang Yi Jiejie's reminder, I wouldn't have thought of this. The servant girl nodded gratefully. She listened to her suggestion and carefully searched. Hang Yi watched as the servant girl squatted there and carefully inspected. The corner of her mouth slowly curled. The silver needle between her 2 fingers disappeared into her sleeve and then it couldn't be seen anymore. Chu Qingyan, this time, I don't believe you have the luck to escape. Huang Yi left the little girl's side, and with a calm expression, she chatted with the people in the courtyard for a while. When Huang Yi finished her work and turned around, she was already gone. Huang Yi looked at the servant girl who was seriously picking the red dates on the ground and then looked around. She had a puzzled expression. Where was Hang Yi? Ever since the power in Hong Yi's hands had been taken away by the little Wang Fei, she had been worried that she wouldn't be able to handle this kind of treatment and make a fuss. It was a pity that after she received a new recipe from the little Wang Fei, she spent all her time in the kitchen. She became busier and basically didn't have time to chat with her. Hong Yi often locked herself in her room and didn't interact much with other people. They were sisters, so she was very worried about her. Forget it. After she finished researching the new dishes tomorrow and the day after, she would go find her to talk and relieve her boredom. Thinking about this, Huang Yi acted like she had solved a major problem and then walked briskly into the kitchen. The kitchen was her favorite place. It would be even better if she could live in it.